Chapter 940. In fact, many years ago, they didn't know how to deal with the internal affairs of the mainland. They only followed young Master Tang to carry out protection missions. Every time they did a mission, everyone knew that they were in trouble. They were like people who wandered on the edge of life and death. In order to catch a drug lord, they would lurk in the grass for 3 days and 3 nights. If they were not careful, they would still be shot. Even young Master Tang had been injured before. That person didn't need to be at the front line at all. But he was the one who told them. The reason why they would pick up guns to kill people. It was so that the people they loved and the people who loved them wouldn't have to worry about being hurt one day. All the dirty things in the world would be solved by them. And those people only needed to live a carefree life. But the current situation had already touched the bottom line of the Tang sect. Therefore, he didn't care about what the chain behind this was. When young Master Tang received Hellion Vivian's call, he only said one word. Catch. Hellion Wei Wei was also not long-winded. With the momentum of a sudden clap of thunder, she led everyone directly to the location of a certain person. In fact, a certain person who still didn't know what had happened was still trying to bribe some people to help him suppress the matter. But at this moment, someone on the internet exposed a big piece of news. It was the smiling face of a missing female university student left behind in the world. Why did this person go missing? Monkey's technology wasn't good enough. Hellion Vivian had originally planned to fight head-on. However, young Master Tang was still the same as before. He was always decisive and handsome. Leave this matter to me. No matter how rich or powerful the other party is, as long as he crosses the line, I will find a way to punish him. You guys are only responsible for what you have to do. 3 minutes. Young Master Tang personally took over. 6 computers operated at the same time. He didn't care how big the business deal he was talking about was. What he wanted to do was to restore as much of the incident as possible. Although Monkey was powerful, he was really a few levels lower than young Master Tang. This person, who was once known as an internet prodigy, directly cracked all the defense systems. He used the computer's memory hard disk to search and found the last image of the female university student. It was that she was jointly pushing her with a tour guide and a certain CEO Wang. This video was enough for Hellion Vivian to fight a beautiful battle. A certain person had just discussed the process and asked his subordinates to do it. Who would have thought that the answer he received was, not a single marketing account will clear his name. How could this be? Isn't it possible to control marketing accounts with money? All the marketing accounts, control my ass. It was true that they loved money, but they still had a conscience. If he didn't explain clearly what was going on with the video. Don't even think about overturning this. A certain person realized that something was wrong, but his sense of superiority didn't make him feel that it was too serious. After all, this kind of thing was also reported when people went missing. There would always be a day when it was left unsettled. People wouldn't always pay attention to this matter, but he was afraid that it would really affect his future. A certain person's mood had never been as bad as it was now. He called the other 2 people over to discuss how to deal with such an emergency. If it really didn't work out, they would spend a lot of money. Just as they sat down and were about to discuss matters, the door of the conference room was kicked open. Hellion Wei Wei slowly paced forward, following behind her were 7 rough men in neat rows, as well as a certain His Highness who looked like a noble, as well as 2 little ones. A certain person frowned and shouted in a low voice, "Who allowed you to come in?" Hellion Vivian usually didn't talk nonsense with people. She moved and pressed that person on the table with one hand. Lower your voice. I don't like noise. Do you know who I am? How dare you hit me? A certain person turned his head to the side angrily and looked at Inspector Jiang. Major Jiang, I've always respected you, but this doesn't mean that you have the right to do anything to me. My rank is higher than yours. You'd better ask your subordinates to let go. Otherwise, if there's a conflict, it won't be easy to explain to anyone. Inspector Jiang smiled. Don't worry. There's no need to explain this matter. Don't you recognize who she is? A certain person narrowed his eyes and finally saw the truth of Hellion Vivian. She was clearly a lousy reporter disguised as a tourist. Why was she here? Shouldn't Secretary Liu have her under control already? Are you looking for someone to run errands for you? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and kindly answered for him. He's outside now. He's already been beaten to a pulp. The rest immediately stood up. Jiang, are you kidding? Quickly ask this woman to let go. Everyone, it's a pity that I'm not in charge of this operation this time. It's this woman you're talking about. Inspector Jiang shrugged. By the way, let me tell you, she's not a reporter. She's the boss of the Ghost Organization. Oh, you might not know about the Ghost Organization, but you must have heard of the other one. She's one of the 12 shadows of the Tang sect. You should be clear now. Whether she lets go or not is really not up to me. Hearing the words Tang sect, the person who wanted to use his identity to suppress her was completely stunned. He quickly explained, there's a misunderstanding. There must be a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Hellion Vivian lowered her voice. Such a big thing happened, and you want to use the word misunderstanding to cover it up? Do you really think that no one will care about you? With that said, Hellion Vivian dragged the person and pushed him to old age. Take him away. This series of actions was too fast. It was so fast that before anyone could react, a line was completely cut off. A certain person who was in a daze didn't have any of his previous arrogance. He only pulled Hellion Vivian and kept explaining, but it was useless. The truth was very clear. No matter how much he regretted it, only death awaited him. Hellion Vivian personally handed the person to young Master Tang. The person still looked like he was in a military uniform. He held a thin and long cigarette in his fingers. He looked a little lazy, but more than that, his back was straight. This matter won't end just because the person was arrested, Hellion Vivian murmured in a low voice. Young Master Tang looked at her and suddenly smiled. Of course, I said that you do what you should do, and I'll do what I should do. Beligaju didn't really want to see Hellion Vivian and young Master Tang alone, because this human's willpower was too strong. Even the surrounding darkness couldn't affect him. It was obvious that this person's heart was completely black, and he had killed countless people. However, Bailey Jiaju actually saw something similar to sunlight in his heart. Beligaju's divine sense told him that it was given to him by someone. Just like the reason why he was who he was now, and not a demon who only knew how to kill people, was also because of Hellion Vivian's existence. Hellion Vivian didn't understand the meaning of young Master Tang's words at first, until she saw a short interview before she left Li City. It was young Master Tang. That person stood openly under the beam of light, his eyes looking straight at the camera. He was tall and slender, and every word was clear. Chapter 941. Every time something happens, we remind the women around us how to prevent this kind of thing from happening when they go out at night or travel. But what I want to say is that violence and injustice should be stopped immediately. If you are alone at that time, don't walk away. Call on others to stop it with you. If you are 2 or more people, please think of a way to stop it. Here, I don't want to talk about how girls should protect themselves, because in my family, protecting girls should be done by men. As for other aspects, I can also respond here. I love this land, and the woman I love is here. She told me how warm it is here. I can't guarantee that I can be by her side 24 hours a day, so I will do my best to sweep away all the darkness. No matter who the other party is or how strong their background is, as long as they do something wrong, I will let them get the punishment they deserve. As he said this, the sun just set behind young Master Tang. The afterglow shone on his handsome military uniform, and it was dazzling. Hellion Vivian remembered a long time ago, the little boy who looked at her without saying a word in Chinatown. It had always been like this. Even if this person's hands were stained with blood, he didn't look dirty. Instead, he seemed to emit light. Perhaps this was young Master Tang. Hellion Vivian wanted to look at the video again, but her eyes were blocked by someone. It was Beligaju's hand. It was slender and white, without a trace of blood. He whispered in her ear, "Do you know how long you've been looking at him?" 5 minutes. In these 5 minutes, I said 3 words to you, but you didn't respond. Hellion Vivian wanted to explain. But her body was suddenly pulled into Beligaju's arms. He was very strong, as if he wanted to integrate her into his bones and blood. "Don't say anything that makes me unhappy. It will only make me want to lock you up." All the breath Hellion Vivian breathed in was a man's, but she still had to make it clear. "I just think what young Master Tang said is very reasonable. I don't mean anything else. You absolutely can't talk about young Marshal Tang in front of His Highness. He'll get jealous, definitely. Do you think I will believe you?" Beligaju looked at her and raised his eyebrows. Hellion Vivian looked serious. "You have to believe me. How can the most basic trust between people not exist?" Beligaju really cared. This person would never understand that he had always wanted everything from her. Even if it was just for a few minutes, he would never allow her to linger on anyone, let alone look at another man with such a worshipful expression. "It's easy for me to believe you." Beligaju's eyes darkened, and he pulled her into his arms. "When we go back, you take the initiative." Hellion Vivian, they were clearly talking about trust, so why did they talk about who took the initiative? "Well, if it's not up to standard, I'll take the initiative. You should know what the consequences are if I take the initiative." Beligaju was still smiling, and he looked very, very gentle. Hellion Vivian still saw other emotions in his eyes, so she laughed as well. She reached out and pinched Beligaju's face. "Hey, you're obviously jealous. Besides, young Master Tang has his little childhood sweetheart. Why are you even jealous of a married man?" "Student Hellion Wei, what we're talking about now is the problem of you neglecting me." Bailey Jiaju's voice was very clear and noble as he said slowly, "Do I need to be jealous of anyone?" Hellion Vivian. "Then what are you doing now? Tell me." The two little ones looked at each other and tacitly chose the car driven by the official, temporarily distancing themselves from their imperial father. Their imperial mother didn't notice it just now, but they saw with their own eyes that when their imperial mother was watching the video, the flowers and trees around a certain someone withered in an instant. It was better to avoid such an imperial father. Beligaju didn't continue the discussion with Hellion Vivian, and pulled her into the prepared sports car. "If you think that His Highness is driving, you're wrong." The one driving was Hellion Vivian, and His Highness sat leisurely in the front passenger seat as usual, directing Hellion Vivian how to take the route. They didn't fly away directly, but went to Lee City. The reason was because when they just got off the plane, Hellion Vivian sighed, it was a pity to come to Lee City and not go to Lee City. Beligaju cancelled all his itineraries on the same day and booked a hotel. Although he wanted to go back early, lock up the certain someone who belonged to him, and have her without any scruples. However, whatever Hellion Vivian wanted to do, His Highness would always let her do it. Even though Beligaju didn't like the sun very much, the ultraviolet rays in Lee City were very strong, especially in the afternoon. His Highness still allowed Hellion Vivian to support him, and looked at the old streets of Lee City with shining eyes. She looked like a small animal. His Highness curved his thin lips, hugged her, and kissed Hellion Vivian's hair. That action was very light, so light that Hellion Vivian, who was only focused on eating, didn't notice it, but it was seen by the people around them. He must love his girlfriend very much. Wow, that look in his eyes just now, it was so affectionate that I was drunk. Hellion Vivian was indeed slower in some aspects, but she could clearly sense that His Highness didn't like the sun, so she wanted to go back to the hotel after shopping for a while. Beligaju raised his eyebrows. "Don't you like it? Why are we going back? You're afraid of the sun." Hellion Vivian pulled him forward, and they walked to a cool place. As smart as she was, she quickly realized something. Although His Highness didn't stay in the sun much in the past, it wasn't to the point where he wasn't used to being under the sun. Now, he frowned as soon as the sun came out. Could it have something to do with him tearing apart time and space? In the end, it was all for her. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment, and tightened her grip on the big hand in her hand. Beligaju obviously knew what was wrong with the person he was keeping in captivity, but His Highness liked it when she was worried about him. In this case, she should be able to do it for one more day. The man with the thin lips was like a blooming datura flower, with a charming black-bellied heart. After returning to the hotel, the more Hellion Vivian thought about it, the more she felt that His Highness needed to be taken care of, so she did all the work of peeling oranges, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say that. In the past, Hellion Vivian was only ordered to carry the luggage, but now, Hellion Vivian took the initiative to carry the luggage, and even helped His Highness put the chopsticks on the bowl. Bailey Shangxia looked at the scene, lowered his voice, and said to his father, "Did you do something again to deliberately make Mother misunderstand?" Chapter 942. Beligaju wiped his thin lips with a smile. "I'm just acting like I'm hiding from the sun. What kind of misunderstanding is this? I don't like the sun to begin with." Bailey Shangxia chuckled. "Your body isn't that weak yet, right?" He knew that his father had suffered a severe backlash, but to his father, even if it was a backlash, he could still destroy the world. Why would he be unable to withstand a little bit of sunlight? He could endure it, but demons didn't feel pain. It was obvious that he was doing it on purpose, making it seem like he was in a very serious condition. How shameless. The little one's face became even more cool and soft. He held a small bowl and seriously fed little Qingchen. Anyway, no one in the world could stop his father from acting. He realized that ever since he found his mother, his father's level of shamelessness had increased by leaps and bounds. In the past, although his father was full of black water, he wasn't interested in anything. He was just a little more brutal. However, it was different when it came to his mother. He pretended to be weak 24 hours a day, and that was really enough. Beligaju never cared about how his little demon looked at him. He was a demon, and playing tricks and scheming were his interests. However, he knew that a certain little phoenix didn't like him killing people. Therefore, his physiological needs were completely solved by a certain someone. Since that was the case, of course, he had to think of a way to make a certain someone lie down willingly. He liked it when she took the initiative. Her face was always red, and that would only make him want to bully her more. Bailey Jiaju looked at the figure that was swaying back and forth in front of him. He stroked his thin lips and smiled. Li City was a good place. The fragrance of flowers permeated everywhere, and the smell of food was quietly fermenting inside. The two little ones went to bed early. Bailey Shangxia helped little Qingchen wash her hair and blow-dry her hair. The two of them changed into little pajamas and sat on the ground to play Ghost Messenger. That's right, they were playing Ghost Messenger. Even the surrounding ghosts were so frightened that they began to tremble. The ghost messengers were put on wigs and lipstick. They were crying and just wanted to go back to hell as soon as possible. These two little devils were the bane of their existence. Hellion Vivian saw that Dabao and Air Bao were having fun, so she decided to take His Highness out for a walk. He couldn't go out during the day, but it shouldn't be a problem for him to go out at night. Hellion Vivian ate until she was full at night. Basically, everything that His Highness didn't eat would be picked out and eliminated by Hellion Vivian. As they walked, Beligaju did not forget to stretch out a hand to rub the belly of the person in his arms. Hellion Vivian leaned into his arms with a smile and held his other hand. She looked at the snacks along the way with interest. However, Beligaju wouldn't buy it for her. He didn't want her to roll around in bed after eating. This one looks good. It's spicy, and so is that one. Hellion Vivian had 3 hobbies in her life. First, money, second, appearance, and third, food. Now that she was in the ancient city, she wanted to eat whatever she saw. Beligaju pulled her back and said in a faint voice, "Aren't you on a diet?" Speaking of the matter of losing weight, it was after arriving at Li City today, after Wei Wei saw a girl from the south, she made up her mind. Different from the northern girls, the southern girls all looked petite and gentle. Wei Wei looked at her own height and decided to control her appetite. This made Beligaju, who was happy to feed a certain person, frown. However, His Highness was smart. He didn't say anything and kept tempting her with delicious food. In the end, not only did Hellion Vivian eat more than usual, she even ate half a bowl of rice more than usual. Moreover, Hellion Vivian still didn't notice His Highness's thoughts. When she heard Beligaju's reminder, she immediately stopped drooling and said to Beligaju, "That's right. You have to supervise me like this in the future." Bailey Jiaju's lips curved into a half-smile as he hugged the person in his arms and kissed her forehead. He thought to himself, she's my pet, so of course I'm the one who should feed her. How can she casually eat these random things outside? His Highness had always been a person with a strong desire to control. However, his desire to control was covered up by his black-bellied methods. Even if Hellion Vivian found out, she wouldn't say anything. Anyway, as long as His Highness was happy, he could raise her however he wanted. However, in reality, Hellion Vivian wasn't fat at all. Although she looked a bit taller than southern girls, her figure was exquisite. However, her figure was exquisite. She had long legs and a slim waist. Coupled with her striking softness, this only made her even more stunning when she wore the ethnic long dress. Hellion Wei Wei's appearance had never been that of the girl next door type, let alone pure and innocent. Her beauty was like a spider lily blooming in the dark, like a raging fire in full swing. When outsiders saw her, they might think that she was a bad woman. As a result, many people said that it was impossible for the emperor to truly like the phoenix. It was because she didn't have the appearance of a good girl. When this woman was holding a scimitar, she made people feel that she was bloodless and heartless. When she was chanting, she didn't have a kind attitude at all. Instead, she was lazy, unlike other people who were very clean. That was why people in the Buddhist world said that even though she was noble and beautiful, she would never be treated with sincerity by men. They thought that it was the same for emperor. But they never thought that Beligaju liked this kind of Hellion Vivian. His most beautiful phoenix could always easily make him want to own her and make her belong only to him. However, before Beligaju did so, Hellion Vivian raised her head, and her eyes were clear. "Let's sign a new contract." Beligaju was shocked and looked up at her. "You want to sell your soul to me?" When tearing space and time, the contract effect should be affected. Otherwise, why didn't you find me immediately? Hellion Wei Wei analyzed as she said, "After a demon signs an exclusive contract, he will become invincible. Coincidentally, I can help you recover from the backlash that you suffered." So she didn't care at all about selling her soul to the demon? Beligaju reached out and hugged the person in front of him tightly. In the face of such a proposal, Beligaju would not refuse. A long time ago, he had thought countless times about pulling this person into the darkness and being with him forever. But every time, he was reluctant to do so. Now, he could finally have her completely. Of course, Beligaju wouldn't hesitate. It was just a contract, not a one-sided sale. But on the basis of this, the demon's submission to the contractor was added. It meant that in this relationship, the real master became Hellion Vivian. She had given her soul to him, but he had given everything to her. Chapter 943. With such a shameless father, Bailey Shangxia still felt very tired. For the time being, he didn't have to go against his father. He had to accumulate strength for revenge, and his younger brother was also hungry. As a good elder brother, Bailey Shangxia still placed his younger brother first. The two little ones walked in and looked at the half-asleep Hellion Vivian for a while. Then, they were instructed by their father to pack their small suitcases. Logically speaking, shouldn't this kind of thing be done by adults? The two little ones questioned their father. No wonder Imperial Mother has always said that there's a problem with your education method. Beligaju sat on the bench with his legs slightly crossed. He glanced at the two little mushrooms indifferently and said in a very slow tone, "Father is training your ability to do things by yourself. What's wrong with that? Then why did you let us pack your clothes?" Qingshan ran back and forth between the two rooms, holding a certain highness's suit in her hands. Her cheeks were puffy and cute. Beligaju said very slowly, "This is to let you know what it means to respect the old and love the young." The two onlooking ghost messengers. The daily life of the big devil and the little devil. They felt that the big devil had already reached a certain level of shamelessness. After the two little ones finished packing, Qingshan wore a small sun hat. The hat was worn upside down, and the hair inside stood up. She looked handsome and cute. Bailey Shangxia's little face was covered with a pair of big sunglasses. He was dragging a small suitcase in his hand, and the few black diamond earrings on his ears made him look like a little vampire. He was very cool. Hellion Vivian finally didn't feel so tired. After waking up, she saw that her luggage had been packed. Even her clothes were put on by a certain highness. She only needed to wash her face and then leave. Probably because he was worried that she would be tired, this time, even the suitcase was pulled by a certain highness. He didn't forget to hold Qingshan in his left hand. Bailey Shangxia followed behind him, pulling his small suitcase coolly. The three of them even looked very cool when they walked. This time, they didn't take a private plane back, but the first-class cabin booked by Vivian. After all, flying back and forth in a private plane didn't have the mood to play. It was more interesting to wait for the plane with everyone and check in. It was indeed interesting because there were two little ones walking around in the airport. Others didn't know what they were doing because they couldn't see the rope in their hands. Only the undead spirits inside were so scared that they hid and didn't dare to show their faces. Coincidentally, there was a new ghost messenger who was going to take office today. The old ghost messenger was still walking in front swaggering, and he said to the person behind him in an imposing manner, "This airport is our territory. This is the most leisurely place. The safety measures are good, and very few people die. It's unlike the people in charge of the hospital, who have to lead people down every day. Here, we only need to eat a stick of incense, and we won't see any powerful people for a year and a half." Before it could finish its sentence, the newly appointed Reaper saw its boss hide in a corner with a whoosh. It was so fast that it was completely stunned. Of course, the old ghost messenger wouldn't leave the new ghost messenger alone. He reached out and dragged his disciple to the corner of the wall to hide with a pile of undead spirits to disguise himself. "Boss, what's wrong?" The new ghost messenger was a little confused, but he also knew that with their noble identities, how could they hide with a group of undead spirits? The old ghost messenger didn't care who he was hiding with, he only cared about why the little devil and the big devil appeared in the airport at the same time. "Don't stretch your neck, you'll be taken away." The old ghost messenger lowered his voice. "Didn't you see what the little devil is holding in his hand?" The new ghost messenger took a closer look and was completely enraged. He jumped out and blocked the path of the two little ones. His imposing manner was very strong. He thought that he must perform well in front of his boss. "How dare you humans? You dare to slip away from the ghost messenger." The old ghost messenger. Damn it. Why did he bring a retard out? The old ghost messenger could clearly see Bailey Shangxia's pair of red eyes light up evilly, meaning nothing more than to say, "Look, a new toy has arrived." Thus, in less than a minute, the two little ones' toys turned from 2 to 4. Seeing that they were about to board the plane, Qingshan raised her little finger and counted. Then, she tied the rope and pulled the 4 ghost messengers, swaying behind her brother. The new ghost messenger was stunned. He turned his head and asked the old ghost, "Boss, why is a human child so strong? You've never told me that there are people in the human world who like to catch ghost messengers as toys. He must have not seen how powerful we are, right?" The old ghost messenger didn't want to talk anymore. The feeling of being pulled along was really not a good feeling. The other 2 ghost messengers were originally waiting for their colleague to inform the little king of hell, but now it seemed that their colleague was reliable, but the new colleague was not. The whole army was dead. In the future, when they recruit ghost messengers, they must be more careful. They must not accept those who are not smart. The boarding line was very long. Bailey Shangxia was afraid that Qingshan would be bumped into, so he handed his small luggage to Beligajun, seriously carried the little one who was only a head shorter than him, looking very cool. Hellion, Vivian and the others were in first class, so under normal circumstances, they were the first to board the plane, so there was no need to cut the queue. However, just as a bespectacled man in front was about to take a step forward, a foreigner jumped out and blocked his path. The foreigner seemed to have drunk, but not much, but his expression was fierce. He looked at the bespectacled man with contempt and took the lead to walk into the passageway with his small suitcase. No matter where it was, this kind of behavior would not be liked. Moreover, when he entered, the foreigner even bumped into the bespectacled man intentionally or unintentionally, which was very rude. However, this small matter did not attract everyone's attention. Perhaps they did, but because that person was a foreigner, they vaguely passed by. Hellion Vivian took a step forward and held the bag that the bespectacled man had dropped. Her voice was very calm. "Are you okay?" The bespectacled man shook his head and quickly said, "Thank you." He originally thought that it would be a small interlude, but when he boarded the plane, the foreigner seemed to be on the phone, his voice was very loud, and his anger was burning. In the end, he cursed in a low voice and hung up the phone. When he saw the bespectacled man dragging his luggage over, he had that contemptuous and disdainful expression again. With malice, he stood there with his long legs and looked at Hellion, Vivian and the others. No, it should be said that he looked at everyone who walked in as if he was looking at a pile of trash. Chapter 944. Initially, nothing much happened. However, half an hour after the plane took off, the conflict escalated. Bailey Shangxie twisted his little body coolly and reached out to rub Qingqin's little ears. The 4 reapers were chained to their seats in a row. No one could see them. It was quite miserable. The stewardess in uniform began to deliver drinks to the passengers. When she walked to the foreigner's seat, she politely asked him in broken English if he wanted to eat. The foreigner was playing on his computer and waved his hand to refuse. On the other hand, the bespectacled young man at the side was a little hungry. He ordered a bowl of beef noodles. Then, he opened the folding table behind the foreigner's seat and placed the tray on the table. He held his chopsticks, but because the foreigner in front of him had placed the back of the chair, he felt very uncomfortable eating. He couldn't pick up the noodles with his chopsticks and couldn't move his mouth. When the beautiful stewardess saw this, she immediately suggested to the foreigner in a friendly manner that because the passengers in the back row were eating, please straighten the back of the chair for convenience. Unexpectedly, this foreigner waved his hand violently and ignored the stewardess. He also didn't adjust the back of the chair. The beautiful stewardess was a little stunned. She seemed to be wondering if she didn't express herself clearly. She repeated her words again. "I said no. Do you understand?" The foreigner's voice was exceptionally loud, and his appearance was extremely arrogant. Hellion Vivian looked at this scene and slowly narrowed her eyes. She spoke in fluent English. "Sir, although the international aviation regulations do not state that you must straighten the back of the chair when eating in the plane, for the sake of the people around you, can you please?" This was Hellion Vivian's very polite attitude. When dealing with outsiders, she had always been polite before resorting to force. Although her eyes had turned cold because of this foreigner's attitude, after all, this was Huaxia, not the foreigner's territory. "Shut up. Shut up. Shut up." The foreigner seemed to have been ignited. He glared fiercely at Hellion Vivian. "If you want to argue with me about this, call the person in charge here. Otherwise, don't poke your nose into other people's business." His voice went up another level. The stewardess was a little frightened. She pressed Hellion Vivian's hand with both hands and said, "It's okay. There's no need to make such a big fuss." Then, he politely apologized to the bespectacled young man. "I'm very sorry, we didn't let you enjoy the service you deserve. Your meal difficulty is due to our work." Before she could finish, the foreigner stretched out his right arm and 2 fingers, beckoning the stewardess over. Then he said to the stewardess in English, "Can you be sure that this person understands what I just said? I can put down the back of the chair whenever I want. That's my business." There's no law that says I have to do that. Go, translate for that person and make sure he understands. I understand, and I heard it very clearly. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes at him. Your attitude is very rude. I can sue you at any time. Come at me if you have the guts. Let's see what you can do. His voice was very loud. It was so loud that the stewardess could only say to Hellion Vivian, forget it, forget it. This kind of small matter will pass after a while. After all, we're on a plane. Forget it. Hellion Vivian could see that the stewardess was forcing a smile. She had said it many times. So many times that Hellion Vivian could sense the grievance hidden in it. Hellion Vivian had been on so many planes, domestic and overseas, and had carried out so many missions. The foreigners she met were warm and polite, but this one did not treat the Chinese as human beings. Perhaps he had the law and reason, but his attitude made Hellion Vivian very clear that he looked down on her, the bespectacled young man, and even the stewardess. They were here to earn the Chinese's money. Since they were here to earn our money, they were not our masters. Did we treat them so well that they did not know what respect and politeness were, or did they not take the Chinese seriously from the beginning? Their actions were so exaggerated that it was unbearable. If the same thing happened to the Chinese, wouldn't they be criticized by countless people for being uneducated? In reality, who was the one who was truly uneducated and even rude? This time, Hellion Wei was really angry. Although she did not show anything on the surface, the coldness in her eyes made the two little ones look at her one after another. However, the person they saw was not Hellion Vivian, but Beligaju. After all, with their father's personality, they felt that he would not tolerate anyone who made their mother unhappy in front of him. The strange thing was, why didn't their father do anything? Bailey Shangxia raised his head again and glanced at Beligaju. His thin lips were slightly raised, and he did not look angry at all. There was a business magazine spread out on his lap. If he was not looking at this scene with his eyes, people would probably mistakenly think that he did not hear the noise at all. But in fact, he did hear it, and his fingers were tapping on the magazine. The devil's breath mixed with it made people confused. Bailey Shangxia sat a little closer and lowered his voice. Dad, don't tell me that you have become kind now? Dad? Beligaju seemed to be thinking about this name. First, he rubbed his thin lips with his fingers, then reached out and patted his son's head as if he was patting a ball. Bailey Shangxia, how many times have I told you not to have this kind of illusion? Believe in your mother, she can solve this kind of small matter by herself. Bailey Shangxia raised his small eyebrows and smiled wickedly. I believe in my mother, but I don't believe in you. It was not normal to be so honest. As a gentleman, even if I can't stand some stupid humans, I have to give my partner the right to vent her anger. Bailey Jia Ju wiped his slender and clean fingers. The side of his face made him look like a vampire, noble to the point of elegance, but with a lowered head of viciousness. Sit back down obediently. This seat belongs to your mother. Bailey Shangxia, Hellion Vivian did have a way to vent her anger. She closed her eyes and kept thinking about why the other party was so arrogant. It was because the Chinese had always adhered to the principle of harmony. This principle was not wrong, but if the other party thought that their kindness was weakness, then they had to know that their friendliness did not mean that they were cowards. As a lawyer, Hellion Vivian was very clear that foreigners in the mainland were different from Chinese people in the mainland. They did not need to abide by Chinese laws, they only needed to abide by international laws. It was probably because of this that some scumbags were so unrestrained in China. Chapter 945. They boasted that they were superior to others, and the foreigner on the plane was a typical example. The wheels of the plane slid across the ground and shook for a while. When the plane stabilized, Hellion Vivian's eyes became colder. It was not because of anything else, but because the foreigner picked up a phone call as soon as they landed on the ground. His tone was very unpleasant. Hellion Wei knew that there were many reasons why some foreigners looked down on Chinese people. Some even joked in private, saying that Chinese women were easy to get. As long as they showed their foreign faces, they would be able to get everything done. They did not even have to put in any effort, and those women would come to them to strike up a conversation. No matter what a foreigner looked like, even if he was bald and ugly, there were only Huaxia women around him. Basically, they were all young and beautiful. This situation did exist, but it didn't mean that all Huaxia women were the same. Some girls were kind, upright, independent, and worked hard in the business world with the most professional attitude. They relied on their own strength and hard work. Such girls could be seen in every corner of Huaxia. They might be cashiers in supermarkets, cute girls who were still in school, or department managers who were working overtime in professional clothes. They worked so hard and endured all kinds of pressure, not because they wanted to be looked down upon in their own country. Hellion Vivian listened to the foreigner's phone call. Her fingers moved and she handed the suitcase to His Highness. The two little ones wanted to ask their mother if she needed help in the fight. They could help. But before they could do anything, they were pulled back by their father. His Highness's posture was as handsome as usual. He held the two little ones by their collars with one hand and the phone with the other. Although the corners of his mouth were still smiling, it made people feel that he was domineering. Hellion Vivian walked very fast. When she passed by the foreigner, she even brought a gust of wind. When the foreigner saw her coming, his first reaction was to sneer and then look at her with disdain. Hellion Vivian was not angry. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him with obvious provocation on her face. The foreigner had never been treated like this before. He gave Hellion Vivian the middle finger and his attitude was very arrogant. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and pulled his hand over. When the foreigner saw this situation, he thought that Hellion Vivian was going to fight with him. He cursed under his breath and didn't withdraw his ferocious expression. Hellion Vivian turned her face to the side, and an inconspicuous blush appeared on her face. At that moment, Bailey Shangxia felt the deadly murderous aura emanating from his father. He thought that this foreigner would definitely not survive today. Although it was a trap set up by Empress Mother, as long as they touched Empress Mother, no matter what the reason was, there would be no good in the end. Such a commotion naturally attracted the attention of the airport security personnel. The foreigner was still waving his arms. Every move he made was filled with ferocity. However, he knew that he had made a mistake. However, in his opinion, it was impossible for these Huaxia people to discover his mistake. Therefore, he planned to leave in disdain. However, what he didn't expect was that Hellion Vivian flashed in front of the foreigner. She touched her face with her fingers and smiled wickedly. "You want to leave after hitting someone? Didn't you say that you know international law very well? That's good. I also know the rules of international law very well." With that said, Hellion Vivian pressed the earpiece on her ear. "Are the police here?" "Very good, let them come in and take this foreigner to court." "Yes, I want to sue him." "What should I sue him for?" "Illegal assault, injury, disfigurement, does that count?" When the foreigner heard Hellion Vivian's words, he was stunned. Just now, she was the one who grabbed his hand and slapped his face. Also, this was called disfigurement? It was just a little red, right? How was this disfigurement? Unfortunately, the person he met was Hellion Weiwei. Hellion Weiwei's eloquence had the ability to make the police take him away. She said that not only was her face hurt, but she was also scared. She would be afraid to go out on the street in the future. Moreover, this was not an ordinary attack. This foreigner was violent and had to be controlled. The foreigner always thought that Huaxia people were easy to fool. Under normal circumstances, as long as they saw his appearance, they would unconsciously show their inferiority. However, this woman could reverse black and white to such an extent. He desperately wanted to explain in English. However, Hellion Vivian directly interrupted him in Chinese. "Are you going to deny the fact that you just hit someone? The surrounding people are all watching." "Enough. I admit that I did hit someone, but that was you. Since you admit it, there's nothing to say." Hellion Vivian turned to the police and said, "You can take him away." The foreigner was held on both sides. He was so angry that his face was distorted. He thought that was the end. However, to his surprise, the woman looked at him with a smile and said a long sentence in English in a low voice. It was difficult for others to understand because there were too many professional words in it. However, as a foreigner, the foreigner understood it very clearly. She said, "You think you can do whatever you want in Huaxia without obeying the laws of Huaxia? Since you think so, I'll send you to the International Court of Justice. It's not my time that you waste. People like you should be most afraid of wasting time, right?" This was the style of every foreigner. He was a senior executive in Huaxia. There were too many things for him to deal with in the company. He had encountered problems in his work these days. If he was involved in legal issues, the company might let him leave because of his low efficiency. Even if he had to pay a lot of money, the foreigner didn't want to be sent back to China because of such a small matter. At this moment, he also understood that he had kicked an iron plate, but it was too late for regrets. When he was dragged away, the woman standing in front of him smiled so obviously. She even deliberately touched her cheek with her finger, as if she was returning the favor. In fact, the foreigner didn't know that this was just the beginning. Bailey Shangxie clearly heard his father's voice on the phone. It was neither high nor low, but it made people feel cold in their bones. "You found it? Then let him know what it means to be slapped in the face. First, stop the cooperation with his company. Tell him the reason for stopping the cooperation is because of the manager of his department." Chapter 946. Why? Because he did something very stupid when he was on the plane. The coldness in Beligaju's eyes was incomparably deep. He watched Hellion Vivian slowly walk over, said one last sentence, and hung up the phone. But it wasn't over yet. His Highness glanced behind him, and immediately, a dark shadow swept in the direction where the foreigner was taken away. Bailey Shangxie crossed his arms in front of his chest. "Dad, didn't you say that you wanted Mother to vent her anger on her own? Now that she's done, it's my turn to do it. Do you have a problem with that?" Bailey Jiaju slowly glanced at his son, who was a troublemaker. Bailey Shangxie said angrily, "Then why don't you let me vent my anger on my brother? You can take the ghost messenger to vent your anger on that foreigner tonight, but don't let your mother find out." Beligaju lowered his voice. "She doesn't like to use ghosts to deal with humans." When the two little ones heard this idea, the corners of their mouths immediately curled up. Using ghosts to deal with humans, their father was really too evil. One had to know that killing people wasn't scary, but making people live in fear every day was the scariest. When the time comes, we must scare him until he goes to see a psychiatrist. Little Qingchen sounded like a little gentleman when he spoke, but in fact, he took after his highness in every way. If Hellion Vivian heard such an unscrupulous plan of the three of them, she would definitely doubt whether there was something wrong with her education system. His Highness was very happy. With two free laborers, he didn't have to go out and do things himself at night. One had to know that sometimes, Vivian was so smart that he would more or less restrain himself. After all, he didn't like to hug his favorite phoenix with the smell of blood. But even so, when he saw the inconspicuous red mark on Hellion Vivian's face, the bloodthirsty feeling in the depths of Beligaju's heart continued to surge out. Therefore, after wrapping his arm around Hellion Vivian's waist, His Highness made a new decision to settle the score personally. Hellion Vivian looked at the man's eyes and knew that he was unhappy because of her injury. She felt a chill all over her body, and even after getting into the car driven by the driver, she didn't retreat. Thus, as a domineering president, Hellion Vivian was very obedient. Originally, she had planned to give His Highness a kiss after they got on the car to appease the anger hidden under Bailey Jia Ju's elegance. After all, when the other half was in a difficult situation, it was basically, "Don't talk, kiss me" pattern. However, it was obvious that this trick had no effect on His Highness at all, because before Hellion Wei Wei could kiss his cheek, she was pushed away by His Highness with an indifferent expression. "Sit properly." How could Hellion Vivian tolerate His Highness rejecting her? She sat down, but she still stole a kiss before sitting down. She was in a very good mood, and even the corners of her mouth curled up. His Highness looked at her and reached out to turn her face to him. Then, Hellion Vivian felt a chill with the scent of sandalwood. It was blood. It was said that the blood of a demon could heal any wound, and could even bring a person back to life. Hellion Vivian was stunned, and she pulled His Highness's hand away. Her heart ached. You are just a little injured. You can just rub it with medicine. Is there a need to use blood? Beligaju looked at her with a deep gaze and said in a low voice, there's a need. After saying that, His Highness picked her up and put her in his arms. Because he was driving a luxury limousine, there was a lot of space in the car. Even if he did these things, it wouldn't affect the man's elegance. He held Hellion Vivian's hand as if he was playing with it, but also as if he was warning her, you're mine. Other than me, no one can touch you. Hellion Vivian knew His Highness well. Even if it was a wound, he had to be the one to give it to her. However, when she saw the bleeding wrist, Hellion Vivian's heart ached. She held that hand and held it all the way. Beligaju liked the way she was worried about him. Although it could be cured with a spell, if it made her nervous, he didn't mind acting like a human and pretending to be in pain. The two little ones watched from the side from the beginning to the end. Qingshan felt that it was hopeless to save her father. His father was too good at pretending, and he knew how to use both the trick of injuring himself to gain sympathy and the beauty trap. No wonder his mother called herself a domineering CEO. Sigh, he had to be prepared to watch his father act at all times in the future. Bailey Shangxie didn't care about his father from the beginning to the end. Without a doubt, his father did this because he didn't want his mother to be injured again in the future. That was why he used blood to heal her. He could use magic even if he didn't use medicine. He used blood to make his mother keep an eye on him at all times, so that she couldn't be distracted. Sure enough, when they arrived at the car dealership, his father looked like he had lost a lot of blood. His face was very pale, but it didn't affect his handsomeness at all. Hellion Vivian let him lie on her bed. She first treated the wound on his wrist, and then went downstairs to make him red date soup. The two little ones were left behind by Hellion Vivian to take care of their father, but they knew very well that their father didn't need them to take care of him at all. As soon as Hellion Vivian left, Beligaju stood up and dialed the number in his hand. He didn't look weak at all. Instead, layers of black fog surged out from behind him. You're here to apologize? Very good, then ask him which hand he used to hit her. Which hand did you cut off the tendons of his hand? The foreigner on the other end of the phone was still arrogant at first. After all, the police in Huaxia couldn't do anything to him. He had a green card in his hand. In fact, this was indeed the case. If it wasn't a criminal case, foreigners would rarely be detained in Huaxia. Therefore, in less than 10 minutes, the foreigner was bailed out by his lawyer. He tugged at his suit, looked at the police with disdain, and walked out of the police station. What he didn't expect was that the whole situation changed the moment he walked out of the police station. First, the company asked him to go back to the headquarters immediately. Then, he was scolded from the beginning to the end. His boss even grabbed his collar and asked him to apologize personally. Where's your upbringing? Do you know that what you said on the plane was no different from what a bastard said? At that time, the foreigner realized the seriousness of the whole matter. He was worried that he would lose his job, so he went to the place that his boss said with a gloomy face. It was a villa in the wealthy district. The whole villa was covered by roses, and it looked like an ancient castle. He originally thought that the other party would forgive him after he apologized. After all, they were business partners. Who didn't put benefits first? However, it was obvious that the foreigner had gotten the situation wrong again. Because His Highness was never short of money. Chapter 947. Ever since the foreigner stepped into the villa, he had experienced a nightmare that he had never experienced before. His left hand was in so much pain that it had lost all feeling. No matter how much he begged for mercy, it was as if he was the only person in the villa. The sound of footsteps getting closer and closer, he was so scared that he fainted. When he opened his eyes again, it was still the same cabin, but the people in the cabin had changed. Everyone's eyes were blood red as they stared at him. It was as if he would be consigned to eternal damnation if he said one wrong word. After doing all this, Beligaju hung up the phone. The smile on his face made the two little ones shake their heads in tacit understanding. Beligaju looked at the two little light bulbs and lifted the blanket as if there was no one else around. He lay back in his original position and continued to pretend that he had lost too much blood. Bailey Shangxia couldn't stand it anymore. "Dad, don't you think it's very shameless of you to keep pretending like this?" "I don't think so." Beligaju slowly unbuttoned his shirt, looking abstinent and noble. "Also, you can take Qingchen out to play. Lock the door while you're at it. You should know very well how much I dislike people disturbing me and your mother." Bailey Shangxia was speechless, but he still had to take good care of his younger brother. One of the two little ones walked in front of the stairs while holding the other's hand. Just like that, they went downstairs with their small waists bent. Then, they brought 4 reapers and a demonic dog to the amusement park. After Hellion Vivian finished boiling the red date soup, she realized that there was no one upstairs. The small bowl that she took out didn't come in handy either. The two little ones must have gone out to play. On the other hand, the man leaning against the headboard was even more eye-catching than usual. Hellion Vivian had always known that as long as this person wanted to, he could easily capture everyone's heart. Beligaju put down the magazine in his hand and looked up at her. "I don't want to drink the red date soup." Was he acting coquettishly? Hellion Vivian was amused. "It's fine if you don't want to drink it. Don't go out today and recuperate." "All right." Beligaju chuckled. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness's appearance was very tempting. She leaned over and touched the man's head. Bailey Jia Ju hugged her in that position and was extremely gentle. "Are you tired?" "Yes." Hellion Vivian was already tired. She had been busy the whole night before coming here. Now that she was being hugged like this, her eyes were a little tired. Beligaju reached out and patted her on the back, as if he was raising a pet. There was a bone-deep tenderness between his eyebrows. "Then sleep for a while." "Your hand." Hellion Wei Wei's voice was filled with fatigue. Beligaju kissed her ear and said, "I'll change the dressing myself. Be good and sleep. Then don't go out." Hellion Vivian was still concerned about this matter. Obviously, she knew what His Highness was like. Beligaju patted her back even more gently. "Okay, I won't go out." In this era, there was no need to go out at all. Just a phone call could settle everything. There were benefits to being in the modern world. Hellion Vivian heard his promise and fell asleep quickly. Beligaju didn't go anywhere. He hugged the person in his arms and patted her with his left hand. The sunlight shone in through the window and shone on the two of them. It was a beautiful scene. It was just an afternoon nap, and it wouldn't take long. His phone rang. Hellion Vivian woke up. Seeing that Beligaju was still there, the tip of her nose twitched. There was no smell of blood, so she took the phone. Beligaju chuckled, turned his head, and lit a cigarette. His posture was very elegant, like a male model in a magazine. He was so handsome that it made people jealous. Hellion Vivian was still lying on top of him. She didn't say anything and swiped her fingers on the screen. As long as Beligaju lowered his head, he would be able to see the content on the screen. Then, a light flashed in his eyes. Class reunion? Hellion Wei Wei didn't mind and yawned. "We have a reunion every year. I haven't been there before, but the class reunion is basically a competition to see who gets there. If it's not a competition to see who's richer, it's a competition to see who marries better. This time is no exception." "I see." Beligaju's eyes darkened and he smiled. "Do you want me to go with you?" "No need. The other half usually doesn't follow class reunions." Hellion Vivian was going to solve something, so she didn't want to bring His Highness along. Moreover, His Highness was so good-looking that she could just admire him at home. Why would she bring him out for others to see? Beligaju didn't insist, but his smile deepened. When you're done, call me and I'll pick you up. Okay. Hellion Vivian nodded and glanced at the time of the reunion on her phone. It was 3:00 tomorrow afternoon. They probably wanted to drink some coffee before dinner. The location was at Starbucks. That Starbucks was very close to Qingshan's kindergarten. It was just right to pick up the two little guys for lunch, send them back to school, and then go to the appointment. However, what Hellion Vivian didn't expect was that when she woke up the next day, Shangxia had already changed into his usual clothes. His leather jacket paled in comparison. His current outfit was very different. It was a hellish black, and his little nails were also black. He looked even more handsome than usual. His little face had the unique arrogance of the demon world. He was just like a little demon. What are you doing? Hellion Vivian immediately woke up. Beligaju put on his tie and leaned over to kiss her forehead. He's going back to the demon world for half a day. Okay. Bailey Shangxia answered coolly. His voice was a little muffled, but this didn't stop him from feeding his little brother with a small spoon. Hellion Vivian also knew that the little demon who hadn't become an adult would sometimes go back to the demon world to absorb the dark energy there. This was the only way to resist the light in the human world. However, she still felt sorry for her son. She reached out and pulled Shangxia over, kissed his face, and put a lot of chocolates in his pocket. Only then did she let him go reluctantly. The demons who came to pick up Bailey Shangxia felt that the little master was especially easy to get along with this time. Previously, when the little master returned to the demon world, he wouldn't obediently return to the demon world unless he destroyed everything around him. However, today was different. Today, the little master would touch his little pocket with every step he took. He didn't even care about those demons who were bound to be beaten up by him in the past. He only glanced to the side coldly. Although he was small, he already had the oppressive aura of the master of the demon world. Behind him were countless demons. Each of them heaved a sigh of relief. They thought that the little master was finally not using them as punching bags anymore. However, something even more troublesome happened. The little master had an unusual interest in jewelry that he used to disdain. He said that he wanted to bring everything back for his little brother to play with. All the demons. This was the rhythm of emptying the demon world. Chapter 948. Little Qingshan, who had originally wanted to go to school with his older brother, straightened his small body and held a pen in his hand as he wrote from memory. After writing for a while, she turned her head to look at her brother's seat. When she saw that no one was there, she turned her head back and continued to bury her head in her notebook. She looked very obedient. Bailey Shangxia told him that he would pick him up with Beligaju after school was over in the afternoon. Qingshan remembered this sentence and looked back from time to time. At noon, Qingshan opened her small school bag as usual. First, she puffed up her cheeks and drank a can of milk that Beauty Weiwei gave her. Then, with a cold expression, she began to touch the lunchbox with her small hands. This was something that Hellion Vivian had never forgotten after she became a mother. It was probably because she lacked a father and a mother when she was young. Therefore, when Hellion Vivian took care of Qingshan, she would always be extra attentive in certain aspects. She would always prepare the meals and put them in the lunchbox. She would also prepare hot soup for her. Qingshan had only been in school for a few days, so she was envied by her classmates for a few days. Because the dishes were so delicious, even the vegetables and mushrooms that the kids did not like to eat were made into cute shapes by Hellion Vivian. Little fatty Cheng did not think much of it. He sneered with a chubby face, "You can't even afford to buy lunch and have to bring it from home. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin." After the previous lesson, little fatty Cheng did not dare to get close to Qingshan, let alone fight with her. He only dared to stand far away and laugh at her. Now, the children in the kindergarten did not know about the relationship between Bailey Shangxia and Qingshan. If little Fatty Ching knew about this, he would never dare to provoke Qingshan again. This was because little Fatty Cheng was scared to death of Bailey Shangxie. Although there were still many children around him, little Fatty Ching knew that many of the children in this kindergarten wanted to treat Bailey Shangxie as the boss. His mother had promised that she would get rid of these two eyesores in 2 days, especially this little country bumpkin in front of him. He was so poor that he didn't like him at all. No matter how good-looking he was, he didn't like him. He only knew how to steal the limelight. Qingshan couldn't be bothered with him. She was waiting for her brother and didn't want to talk to anyone. Little Fatty Cheng was overjoyed when he saw this. He was very rich and said to the children in the class, "My mom will drive the Land Rover to pick me up later. We'll go to Starbucks to eat delicious food. If any of you want to eat the cream cake there, I can buy some for you." The children all liked to eat sweets. When they heard the mention of cream cake, their mouths began to salivate. Little Fatty Cheng was soon surrounded by people. He liked this feeling. He glanced at Qingshan contemptuously and remembered the people who usually followed him. He meant to ask the driver to send the cream cake to him later. Children who were able to attend international schools were usually more mature than ordinary children under normal circumstances. This was because their family backgrounds were similar. Except for some children who were originally from this school district, basically everyone had a chauffeur. That was why little Fatty Cheng looked down on little Qingshan so much. In his impression, little Qingshan came from a poor family. It was only because his family lived in this area that he could afford to attend this school. Obviously, the two of them had different principles when it came to making friends. Although Qingshan didn't like to make friends, she would say a few words to the people around her, no matter what their family background was. Little Fatty Cheng, on the other hand, had completely learned from his family. It wasn't that it was bad. After all, it was easier for people from similar families to become true friends. However, it was too much to bully others just because one's family was superior. Qingshan wouldn't have much contact with such people. She felt that they were stupid even when she looked at them. After drinking her milk, she dragged the 4 reapers and started to take a walk in the classroom. She had to let the reapers slip away every day. This way, they wouldn't always think of running away. The reapers. Who gave you this illusion? Who is it? Every time they were let slip away, the reapers felt that they had died again. Little Fatty Ching didn't know what Qingshan was doing. He arrogantly thought that a country bumpkin would be a country bumpkin who only knew how to play with herself. Qingshan lowered her head and looked at her smartwatch. There were still 4.5 hours before her brother and father would come. Very good. I'll sleep for a while. Just as Qingshan made up her mind to rest, a pleasant chuckle came from outside the classroom. "Son, why are you sitting in the last row?" Qingshan immediately raised his little head. When he saw Hellion Vivian, his big eyes were smiling. Hellion Weiwei walked in from the outside and hugged her son in her arms. "Are you hungry? Shall I bring you to eat something? I still have class in the afternoon." Qingshan reminded his mother like a little adult. Hellion Vivian was straightforward. "Skip it." At that time, Qingshan's life teacher was standing behind Hellion Vivian. Her face darkened. How could she educate her child like this? Qingshan was the one who dealt with the aftermath. He blinked his big eyes and said that today was his father's birthday. His mother came to look for him because she wanted to give his father a surprise. Every time the life teacher saw Qingshan's fair little face, her heart softened. Not to mention, Qingshan deliberately lowered his voice. That look of his made people want to hug him in their arms and buy candy for him. As a result, the mother and son successfully obtained an afternoon off. Their outstanding appearance attracted a lot of children's attention. It was especially so for those who knew little Qingshan. One by one, they came over and asked, "Qingshan, is this your mother? She's so beautiful." Little Qingshan liked it when people praised Beauty Weiwei. He nodded his little head and smiled at those little radish heads, which was a rare sight. Hellion Vivian was very gentle. She did not forget to turn around and say goodbye to the little radishes. Immediately, the children in the class began to envy Helly and Qingchen. Little Fatty Cheng was very disdainful. What's there to envy about a car mechanic? My mother is prettier. Also, my mother's education level is high. She's in the court now. She's many times better than her. But I think that Qingchen's mother is prettier. The little princess in the class said in a low voice. Her face was slightly red. Also, she's very tall and has long legs. She's prettier than the celebrities on TV. Children at this age were innocent and bright. Their reactions were also the most direct. Little Fatty Cheng was very indignant when he heard that. When he saw Mrs. Cheng, who was also Li Meng, his little face was full of resentment. Mom, when did you get rid of that little bumpkin? I feel annoyed whenever I see him. Chapter 949. Didn't I tell you last time? That's my old classmate's son. Once I'm done with this, I'll definitely make you happy. Li Meng coaxed her son as she drove. The class reunion had not started yet. Once it was over, she would ask Helly and Wei Wei and her little country bumpkin to get lost. A lousy car mechanic always loitering in front of her son. Anyway, it was bad luck. Little Fatty Cheng was still unhappy. That woman came to class today. Everyone said that she's prettier than you. Swoosh. The tires of the car slashed across the ground. The sound was loud and ear-piercing. Li Meng turned around and looked at little Fatty Cheng. She's prettier than me? How can she compare to me with that look? Little Fatty Cheng was obviously frightened by his mother's ferocious look. However, he was still angry. I didn't say that. It's those people in class. Li Meng's eyes darkened. Then, she smiled and said, the people in your class are too young. They don't know anything. I'm going to the class reunion later. Don't go to class this afternoon. Come with me and watch how I embarrass that woman. What Li Meng couldn't stand the most was others saying that Helly and Vivian was better than her. It was fine that she was suppressed by that woman in school. But now, who was she? How dare she compare herself to her? Little Fatty Cheng had basically been taught by his mother to be a vain child. When he heard that his mother was going to teach the other party a lesson, he was overjoyed. When he went back home, he told his classmates that his mother was the prettiest. Li Meng didn't drive immediately. Instead, she took out her phone. After thinking for a while, she called Du Cece, who was very close to her. Are you ready? If you're ready, I'll come and pick you up. Someone asked in the group just now. Helly and Vivian is near Starbucks. Du Cece laughed, you don't have to come and pick me up. I still have something to do here. I'll go over once I'm done. I haven't seen that woman for so many years. I have to let her know that she's no longer the arrogant law student she used to be. She's just a broken car mechanic. How can she have such a big face? Yes, yes, yes. How can she be compared to our lawyer, Cece? Li Meng chuckled and her eyes darkened. All right, I'll wait for your call. If you don't come, there will be less fun. Du Cece understood tacitly. I understand, Madam Cheng. Before I go, you should show the jewelry on your body. That will make that woman behave for a while. If she doesn't want to give face to us, we'll expose her when the whole class is there. That will be interesting. That's what I meant too. Li Meng said a few more words before hanging up the phone. Her mood had improved, and her face was full of disdain. Helly and Vivian, huh? So what if she was beautiful? Not to mention that she was a mechanic, just the fact that she had to raise a child alone was enough to embarrass her. Du Cece actually had the same idea as Li Meng. She wanted to go there as soon as possible so that she could trample on Helly and Vivian. However, his uncle was bringing him to meet someone very important today. She understood what her uncle meant. Her uncle wanted them to get to know each other and develop a relationship. Everyone in the business circle knew about that person. Not only did he come from a noble background, but he was also very mysterious. All the entertainment projects in the capital were under his control. Even her uncle's eyes lit up when he mentioned him. Not to mention the socialites beside her. Those who had met that person were infatuated. When they heard that she was coming to Ju Wei today, their faces were full of envy. Her uncle arranged for her to stay in the living room, which was on the first floor of the building. It had been 3 hours since the morning. Her uncle told her that when young Master Ju arrived, he would introduce her to him and told her not to go anywhere. The more it was like this, the more Du Cece felt that the man she was going to meet today was of a high status. Her mind became active. She took out the foundation from her bag and touched up her makeup. She believed that with her beauty and ability, she would definitely be able to make him see her in a different light. If she could get young Master Ju's attention, not only would her classmates at the gathering today be envious of her, but even her socialite friends would come up to her to curry favor. Thinking that she might become the mistress of this building in the future, Du Cece's red lips curled up proudly. At this moment, there was a commotion not far away. A crowd rushed in from outside the door, making it impossible for Du Cece to see who was who. There were 2 men, one at the front and one at the back. The man at the back was holding an office bag in his hand. He looked elegant and his eyebrows were raised. At this time, he was reporting something to the man in front of him in a low voice. When they saw their figures appear in the hall, several managers who had been waiting for a long time quickly went up to them. At the same time, there were also reporters from various media outlets who were carrying cameras and cameras. Their cameras were flashing everywhere. Bailey Jia Ju remained calm and collected as he watched this scene. Suddenly, he stopped his footsteps. He stood tall and straight, his expression was leisurely, so much so that the corners of his mouth were still half-hooked. His perfect side profile didn't show any displeasure, but the depths of his eyes suddenly sank. A middle-aged manager could not see the change in the aura that was exclusive to the devil. On the contrary, he was confident that there was no man in the world who did not like the feeling of being pampered. The higher the position of the person, the more so. Therefore, the middle-aged manager walked forward attentively. The media is very concerned about your annexation of a foreign company this time. Do you want to accept an interview? Also, the company will always encounter some legal problems in its development. I have also invited some professionals. Do you want to meet them? The middle-aged manager thought that the other party would at least respond to his request. However, what he did not expect was that Baligaju did not even look at him. He turned slightly to the side and said to Qing Long behind him, "I'll leave it to you." Then, he walked into the elevator that went straight to the top floor as if there was no one else around. The middle-aged manager was very embarrassed, but he knew that he also needed to curry favor with the special assistant beside the president. He immediately turned to Qing Long and said, "Then, Special Assistant Long, why don't you take a look first? The lawyer who came this time is my niece. She is very good at law." Qing Long closed the information in his hand. Compared to Fire Qilin, he gave off a relatively gentler feeling, but he could definitely understand his master's thoughts better. He glanced at the middle-aged manager and then looked across the crowd at the niece that the middle-aged manager mentioned. He lowered his eyes, as if he was thinking about something. Seeing this, the middle-aged manager gave a look behind him and asked people to separate the media first. Then, he said to Qing Long, "Special Assistant Long, I heard that the president is still single?" Chapter 950. Hearing this, Qing Long stopped in his tracks and raised his eyebrows. Who said that? This is something that everyone knows. There has never been a woman by the CEO's side, right? The middle-aged executive looked at Qing Long with a "don't hide it from me" expression and said seriously, "Actually, apart from business today, I also want to matchmake for the CEO. My niece is not bad. She comes from a good family, is well-educated, and knows how to take care of people. I just don't know what the CEO thinks." Qing Long heard this and suddenly laughed. "You don't need to know what the CEO thinks. Hand over all your work to me later, then you can leave." What? The middle-aged executive's eyes widened. Executive Assistant Long, do you know what you are saying? You want to fire me? Only the CEO has the right to make such a decision. This is the CEO's decision. What he said just now was to deal with you, not the media outside the door. It's just that he didn't give me a clear order on how to deal with you. Unfortunately, Manager Du, you shouldn't have thought of meddling in the CEO's private affairs. Moreover, the CEO doesn't like to be exposed. He has never accepted any interviews from the media. Ju Wei, after such a long time, don't you even know this? I know, I didn't think about the media this time, but I never meant to interfere with the CEO's private affairs. The middle-aged executive pulled Xing Long's arm and whispered, Executive Assistant Long, let me talk to the CEO again. Maybe the CEO will really like her. I'm not crossing the line, Executive Assistant Du, we have been dealing with each other for a year. Azure Dragon's attitude was mild, but in his heart, he began to agree with the words that his master often said. These stupid humans were really dirty from the beginning to the end. They were always so greedy, which made him depressed. I advise you, it's better not to talk to the president about whether you like her or not. If his boss got impatient and killed him, he would have to think of a way to settle the public's opinion. After all, it was too unbelievable that the higher-ups of Ju Wei jumped off a building for no reason. Azure Dragon thought for a while and continued, if you have the idea of letting the president go on a blind date and let him know about it, believe me, you will face more than just being fired. You don't want to experience what it's like to beg for death, right? Then stay here obediently and don't mention this matter again. The middle-aged man's face turned pale in an instant. The media outside the building was still there. Ever since Azure Dragon came to the present, he had become an executive assistant who could settle any matter. Especially when facing the media, he always had his own set of methods. The middle-aged high-ranking official was still standing there, and he was particularly eye-catching. This eye-catching appearance was different from before, and it carried an unbearable feeling. There was no one here, and Du Cece finally squeezed in. Looking at her uncle's expression, she did not know what happened. Uncle, what's wrong? Why is his expression so bad? The middle-aged high-ranking official was still thinking about the matter. In his opinion, the matter was not so serious. It was a good thing to let the president meet his niece. Even if the president was not willing, they could still be friends. This executive assistant Long was too scary. Uncle? When Du Cece saw that the middle-aged high-ranking official did not speak, she could not help but feel puzzled. The middle-aged high-ranking official waved his hand, it's nothing. It's just that some people have been with the president for a long time, and they really think that they can make decisions for the president. I'm fine. But Cece, did you see the president just now? There were too many people, so I didn't see clearly. But from the back, he was quite tall. Du Cece felt a little sweet in her heart. Although it was only a vague figure, based on Du Cece's observation over the years, that man was definitely a dragon among men. That kind of graceful and noble temperament was difficult to develop without the influence of several generations. The middle-aged high-ranking official laughed, and the gloominess just now was swept away. The president is not only tall, but you haven't seen his appearance. If you see him, you will definitely thank me for bringing you to see him. But this time, I'll forget about it. I still need to communicate with Executive Assistant Long about something. Next time, when there is a chance, I will let you meet him in private. The middle-aged high-ranking official thought about this matter based on his opinion. In his heart, this was definitely a good thing. After all, the president was single, and which man did not like beautiful women? What's more, his niece was not a vulgar rouge or face powder. Not only was she a successful lawyer, but she also knew how to be submissive. He thought that she was good enough for the president. Du Cece was also happy to hear that. Then, I will leave first today. There is still a class reunion in the afternoon. When Uncle has arranged it, call me again. Okay. The middle-aged high-ranking official looked at the watch on his wrist. You go first. There will be news as soon as tomorrow. Not only for his niece, but also for himself, he had to find a time to talk to the president. What right did Executive Assistant Long have to fire him? Maybe the president would be happy after he told him about this matter. Cece did not know that her uncle's situation had begun to change because of his intervention in this matter. She thought that her uncle and the other party should have reached a certain consensus, and the other party must have known about her and was waiting to start a relationship with her. As long as she thought of this, Cece could not help but feel happy. In addition, she would be able to teach the woman that she had always disliked a lesson in a short while. This made her smile even more brightly. At 1:00, Helene Vivian rode her flashy BMW Tomahawk and brought Qingshan to Galaxy Soho. This shopping mall was located in a large plot of land that was rarely seen in the inner city of Jingdu. This shopping mall covered an area of more than 50,000 square meters, with a total floor area of 330,000 square meters. It was a business and office building, and it was very beautiful and magnificent. Of course, there were many merchants who stayed in this shopping mall. Since they had arranged to meet at Starbucks here, it was convenient to have a meal here. Qingshan stretched her short legs and jumped down from the tomahawk. Then, she carried her small school bag adorably and held Helene Vivian's hand. Her small face was cold, and she looked like a little prince. Helene Vivian held the keys in her hand. She did not wear a skirt because she wanted to ride the bike. Instead, she wore cool jeans and a coffee-colored leather hat. Her chestnut curly hair fell behind her back, and she looked indescribably beautiful. Not only did such an outfit not make her look ordinary, but it also made her look more eye-catching. Her face was still without makeup, but it was very fair. Helene Vivian was looking at the surrounding merchants. She lowered her head and asked her son, "What do you want to eat? Do you want to eat hot pot?" "No." Little Qingshan poked his little palm and obediently raised his head to add, "Wait for Big Brother to come back before we eat hot pot." Helene Vivian rubbed her son's hair and turned to look at a nearby merchant. "What do you want to eat now?" "Beauty Vivian." Qingshan sighed and looked into Helene Vivian's eyes. "Since you just came in, the number of times your eyes fell on the 3 words Burger King is more than 5 times. If you want to eat Burger King, let's go eat Burger King." Helene Vivian did not feel embarrassed at being exposed at all. She raised her lips and smiled. "Okay, let's eat Burger King. They have recently released a new product, and it is very delicious. There is a layer of tempura vegetables in it, and it is crispy. You will definitely like it." Qingshan had always known that Helene Vivian only ate hamburgers and fries from Burger King. She did not even touch other KFC. Undoubtedly, when Beligaju and Bailey Shangxia were not around, the responsibility of spoiling Helene Vivian fell on Qingshan's shoulders. Knowing that Helene Vivian wanted to eat, Qingshan naturally put this as her first consideration. She queued up to order in a cool manner, and from time to time, she would tilt her little head to look at the new product in the picture. The waitress had seen children order by themselves before, but she had never seen a child order for their mother. Seeing Qingshan pointing her pinky and pointing here and there, she was really adorable. "Child, this doesn't seem to be enough. Do you want to add an extra hamburger?" Seeing that Qingshan only ordered a hamburger set, the waitress thought that he had ordered the wrong thing, so she reminded him with a smile. Unexpectedly, Qingshan shook her little head seriously and said, "I can't let my mother drink too much cola and eat too much fried food. It is not good for her body." The waitress, as well as the parents queuing behind, they often heard these words from mothers to children, but now it was the other way around. They also wanted this kind of son who doted on his mother. Qingshan's height had just reached the bar counter. He tiptoed, pressed 2 straws, and asked the waitress for an empty cup. Then, he carried the tray and wobbled toward Helene Vivian. Qingshan was good at everything, but he often did not roll up his sleeves and rubbed his little face against her. Every time this happened, he would pause and look behind him. There was no one. His older brother was not back yet. How could Helene Vivian not know what the little guy was thinking? Seeing Qingshan's listless appearance, she hugged her son's little head and kissed him. I will take you to the arcade upstairs to play later. Let's catch a little devil doll for your older brother, okay? Okay. Qingshan's eyes lit up. However, he was still very gentlemanly outside. He wiped his little head with a napkin and said to Hellion Vivian as if he had a headache, "Pretty Hellion Vivian, how many times have I told you not to kiss me casually in front of the audience?" Hellion Vivian replied perfunctorily as she kissed her son's face twice. Qingshan, of course, was not angry. He reached out his little hands to help Hellion Vivian pour 1 cup of cola into 2 cups. Then, he sat there, frowning, and squeezing the ketchup in his hands seriously. In some ways, the 3 fathers and sons were the same. When they were eating, they were especially orthodox gentlemen. It was probably the elegance that came from their bones, which was exclusive to demons. Hellion Vivian held a fry in her mouth and lowered her head to help Qingshan roll up his sleeves. This scene was reflected on the transparent glass. It was loving and heartwarming. However, there were some people who were not used to this scene. Li Meng came down from the elevator in a pair of 10-centimeter high heels. She was holding little Fatty Chang's hand, who was eating ice cream. There were 3 female classmates behind her. They had all arrived first and agreed to have lunch here. After lunch, they would go to Starbucks for a cup of coffee and dessert. However, Li Meng did not expect that Hellion Vivian would come first, and she even brought that bastard son of hers. Since that was the case, she could not blame her for taking action first. Li Meng tucked her long hair behind her ear and smiled very sweetly. The 3 girls behind her also saw the scene in Burger King. They could not help but exclaim, "It's Hellion Vivian. The little boy sitting opposite her is her son? It should be. But Hellion Vivian is really something. Look at her, she hasn't changed at all. She's still as beautiful as before. What's the use of being beautiful? Didn't you hear what Li Meng said before? Now she's just a car mechanic. Okay. Since we've met, let's go in and say hello. Let's ask Wei Wei if she wants to have lunch with us." Li Meng's words were very hospitable, making people feel that she had a good heart. In fact, when she pushed open the door in her high heels and walked in, a light flashed in her eyes. There was definitely no kindness in it. Hellion Vivian was feeding Qingshan a burger. The 2 of them ate 1 burger, 1 bite after another. When they ate, they both had a smile on their faces. This was the way mother and son got along. They would first fill their stomachs and wait for Beligaju to come over with Bailey Shangxia after he was done with his work. Then, they would go for a big meal. In short, they were waiting to be fed. These things were definitely impossible for outsiders to know. Therefore, Li Meng took it for granted that Hellion Vivian ate the same burger with her son because she couldn't bear to buy it. The ridicule in her heart deepened. She said, "Wei Wei, why did you bring your son to eat this kind of food? It's so unhealthy." Hellion Vivian still had fries in her mouth, looking lazy. She glanced at the people who appeared in front of her and didn't say anything. Li Meng asked the 3 female classmates behind her to sit down together and smiled. "These are all people in our class. You remember them, right?" Hellion Vivian nodded faintly. In fact, she didn't even recognize all of their faces. However, she couldn't be rude. She still had to answer. The 3 girls glanced at her and then looked at the food on her plate. The corners of their mouths curled up, and they let out an indescribable chuckle. "Wei Wei, why did you only order 1 hamburger? Can you eat enough like this? We're going to eat upstairs. Do you want to eat with us? The food is not expensive. We can have a good meal by spending 300 or 400 yuan per person. Why eat these things here?" Chapter 951. Don't be so greedy. I'm the one paying today. Li Meng turned to Hellion Vivian and whispered, "Vivian, don't be so shy. We're all old classmates. I'll pay for you." Li Meng's words sounded very enthusiastic. "In fact, when it comes to the last point, I'll help you pay for it, it becomes a little more subtle. Yeah. The other three girls also laughed. Since Li Meng is paying, Vivian, don't be so reluctant. Let's go up and order more food. Don't eat a burger with your son so pitifully. At this point, the intelligent Hellion Wei Wei, of course, already understood what they were trying to say. She just found it funny. Did these people think that she couldn't even afford a Burger King? That's why she bought a burger? Did Hellion Vivian look like she was poor? Qingshan also noticed the current situation, but he didn't say anything. These stupid humans weren't worth his time. In short, in their minds, he was already a little bumpkin. No matter what he said, he was poor. Qingshan sighed silently. He looked at himself from head to toe. He didn't have any branded clothes. The clothes he was wearing were sent by Uncle Tang. He said that they were custom-made. There wasn't even a logo on them. Then, he looked at little fatty Cheng who was staring at him eating fries. Qingshan suddenly felt that there was a reason why he was mistaken for being poor. But he clearly loved money. Then, he would work hard to earn money in the future. Just as Qingshan made up his mind. Bailey Shangxia was carrying the priceless black diamonds and black pearls in the demon world. He was going to use them to make a waist chain for his little brother's toy. His little brother didn't know how to wear clothes, so of course he had to be considerate. The demons in the demon world didn't dare to show their faces. They whispered to their companions, "What's the little master doing?" "I don't know. It seems that he's especially interested in jewelry this time. It's the first time I've seen the little master so serious and obedient. It's a miracle that he didn't beat anyone up today. This is a miracle." At this moment, Bailey Shangxia suddenly straightened his little body and glanced in their direction. The fiendish demons trembled. They thought that he was going to grab them and torture them again. Instantly, all of them froze. He was hesitating whether to flee to the left or to the right. Unexpectedly, the little master grabbed the leg of one of them and threw that person out. Bending down, he picked up the largest black pearl at his feet and continued to walk forward. He didn't even notice their existence. All the fiendish demons, what the hell is going on? How could they know that Bailey Shangxia only had the thought of digging for jewelry for his brother? How could he care about them? At this moment, little Qingshan was still eating his hamburger. His little face was round as he took big bites. He looked at the people in front of him with his big eyes and leaned over to drink from his Coke cup. He was so adorable. Obviously, Hellion Vivian didn't take these people's words to heart at all. Her eyes were on her little Qingshan. She pinched his little face and leaned over to snatch a French fry from her son. Qingshan thought that Hellion Vivian liked it, so he dipped the French fry in ketchup with his other little paw and fed it to Hellion Vivian in a gentlemanly manner. Then, he turned his head and said to Li Meng, "Thank you for the invitation, Auntie. But my mother and I prefer to eat French fries. So, Auntie, you can go up and eat by yourselves." Qingshan's voice was cold, but he said it politely. Li Meng couldn't find any fault with it. On the other hand, little fatty Cheng was furious when he saw Qingshan. His nostrils flared as he reached out and tugged at Li Meng's sleeve. "Mom, let him." Before little fatty Cheng could finish his words, he was nailed to the ground by Hellion Vivian's gaze. He didn't know why, but he felt like he was being stared at. "If that's the case, you can eat first." Li Meng seemed to have thought of something and quickly interrupted her son. She looked at Hellion Vivian and said with a smile, "Let's meet on the second floor of Starbucks later." Hellion Vivian curved his thin lips and put one hand behind the back of the chair. He smiled lazily and said, "Okay." Li Meng stood up with a smile and gave the three female classmates a look. Not all the classmates had arrived yet. It would be interesting to reveal the truth when they were all here. The three female classmates didn't know what Li Meng was thinking, but they had always tried to curry favor with Li Meng. When they heard what she said, they didn't stay for long. After they walked out of Burger King, little fatty Cheng's hands were still tightly clenched. He was extremely unhappy. He didn't understand why his mother didn't let him vent his anger. Li Meng pulled her son aside and said in a low voice, "Ching Ching, remember this. That little brat doesn't deserve you to vent your anger in front of others. How many times have I taught you to maintain your composure? That kind of poor person doesn't deserve you to lose your composure. Do you understand?" "I know." Little Fatty Ching gritted his teeth. "But, Mom, you have to teach them a lesson." Li Meng smiled. "Of course. I've already said that I'll help you vent your anger. Come, let's go eat first. It'll be almost time after dinner." In Burger King, Qingshan finished the last sip of her cola and said in a childish voice, "Pretty Weiwei, it seems that your classmates don't just want to have a party with you. Qingshan, you have to remember that the other meaning of any party is to compare." Hellion Vivian flicked his forehead and smiled evilly. "But, they seem to have misunderstood something. They think that I'm very poor." Qingshan reached out her two little hands to save her little head. She educated Hellion Vivian seriously. "It's not that they think you're poor. They think that you're very poor. So, Pretty Weiwei, when I help you in the future, you have to give me more pocket money. Do you understand? You can't exploit child labor. I'm telling you how hard it is to live in this world." Hellion Vivian bent down and picked up Qingshan. She continued, "Besides, look at your brother. He handles so many official matters for your father, but he doesn't have any pocket money. I'm already very generous compared to your father." Little Qingshan was speechless. He finally understood why his older brother had to run away from home. His imperial father and imperial mother were equally shameless. They simply didn't give them any chance to survive. Fortunately, he still had his own little treasure vault. At this thought, Qingshan was about to check the kickbacks in her pocket. Little did she expect that when she lowered her head, Hellion Vivian took away more than a dozen 100 yuan notes, leaving only a 50 yuan note in her pocket. "Pretty Weiwei, you'll lose me if you continue like this. Good girl, it's not good to carry too much money. Last time, you were kidnapped because of this. Mom helped you get rid of it, so you're safe now." Qingshan, "Tricks, it's all tricks. It was an accident that she kidnapped him, okay?" However, Qingshan wasn't strong enough to fight against her bandit mother. After a while, she was distracted by Hellion Vivian's demon-shaped plushie. When Qingshan saw the plushie, she immediately thought of her brother. The plushie was very delicately made. It had a pair of pure black wings on its back and a few black studs on its ears. Its cold expression was very lifelike. Qingshan was overjoyed. He raised his pocket money and was about to buy some game coins. All his actions showed that if he didn't take down this little demon today, he wouldn't leave. Hellion Weiwei counted $100 bills and gave them to the arcade, exchanging them for 1,000 game coins. She wanted to collect 10,000 game lottery tickets, so that she could take down the little devil who was completely black all over. Qingshan was very good at playing with electronic products, especially when it came to calculating the lottery. Every time she put in a game coin, she would win a lot of money. This made the eyes of the gaming parlor's boss turn red with envy. He never thought that the hit rate of the machine would be so high. He even specially asked someone to adjust it. But no matter how he adjusted it, the result would still be crushed by little Qingshan. In the end, Qingshan won the most expensive plushie in the gaming parlor with less than 20 game coins. The plushie was an imitation, and it was taller than Qingshan by a head. It would cost at least 600 to 700 yuan in a shopping mall. Qingshan was even cuter when she carried it, because she couldn't see the road ahead. The owner of the gaming parlor didn't believe it. He put in a game coin himself, but he didn't win a single lottery ticket. Damn it, he lost a lot. 20 game coins were exchanged for a 600 to 700 plush toy. Naturally, little Qingshan was in a good mood, especially since this plush toy was a gift for his elder brother. Hence, he did not care about the beads of sweat on his forehead. He wiped himself clean with his little paws behind his back and continued to walk toward Starbucks. This time, quite a number of students had come. Li Meng sat in the middle. When she saw Helly and Vivian come in, she was very enthusiastic. "Why are you so late? I thought you would finish eating first. Do you want to order dessert for your son? You ate so little at Burger King just now. You must not be full. Li Meng, don't let Wei Wei order anything. A pastry at Starbucks is enough for her to eat a meal at Burger King. How can she be willing to do that?" The female classmate next to her laughed. "How about this? I have a card here. If you order a cup of coffee, you can buy one and get one free. The free cup is just right for Wei Wei." Helly and Vivian didn't say anything. She just looked at the female classmate with a smile. The corners of her eyes were raised, and with the half-smile in her eyes, it added a bit of charm to her face. The female classmate was stunned by Helly and Vivian's gaze. She didn't know why, but there was a trace of coldness in her heart. The others didn't know how she felt, and they all urged Helly and Vivian to order something. Helly and Vivian didn't go to the bar counter. Instead, she held Qingshan's hand and sat on the sofa. She was as lazy as ever. "I prefer drinking compared to coffee. I just finished eating, so I won't drink anymore." Seeing this, Li Meng and the three female classmates looked at each other. They were even more sure that Helly and Vivian was reluctant to order. "Since Wei Wei doesn't want to drink, then forget it." Li Meng tried to mediate. She lowered her eyes and took a sip of the coffee. Her posture seemed noble, but in fact, she was just pretending. "Oh right, Cece will come over later. Wei Wei, you still remember Cece, right? When we were in school, she sat behind you. Now, Cece is awesome. Not only is she getting more and more beautiful, but she also became a top lawyer. A few days ago, she even accepted an interview. Now, she charges a lot of money. She's really busy. I don't care about anyone, but I have to care about you, Mrs. Cheng." As soon as Li Meng finished speaking, Du Cece walked in with a branded bag in her hand. Her hairstyle was very fashionable, with beautiful straight hair. She obviously put on makeup and wore a pair of high heels on her feet. The color of her thin lips was very light. Although she looked like a pretty girl from a humble family, she exuded a sense of professionalism. Probably because she was born in the South, she looked very petite and cute. However, in fact, her eyes were not harmless at all. After she entered the door, she glanced at Helly and Vivian. Then, she pretended to look away casually and started to talk and laugh with everyone. When someone asked her what she wanted to drink, Du Cece deliberately said the name of the cappuccino in English. Her pitch was very high. "Cece's English is really good." Someone sighed. "I could speak a few words in English when I was in university, but after I graduated, I haven't spoken English like this." Du Cece took a sip of coffee. "My English is just average. Li Meng's is the best. Don't you know who her husband is? He's a manager of a multinational company. His friends and clients are all foreigners. When I come across rare words, I have to ask Li Meng to translate them. Hey. Don't think that I can't tell that you're flattering me." Li Meng warned her, but there was a smile in her eyes. Obviously, she liked this kind of compliment. Qingshan, who was raised by 6 rough men, 2 of whom were foreigners, looked at them from the side. She really did not understand. She just ordered a cup of coffee. How could it show that her English was good? If they saw that Beauty Wei Wei used English to fight a lawsuit in America, wouldn't they go crazy? Qingshan felt bored, so she started to play with the little devil in her arms. After playing with him for a while, she turned her head and whispered to Helly and Vivian, "When will brother come?" "He said that he will come after the small dinner table is over." "If I'm not in school, will brother not be able to find me?" Before Helly and Vivian could say anything, Du Cece, who was beside her, said, Wei Wei, how about you? We've been talking for so long, but I still don't know where you're working now." Chapter 952. Du Cece's voice was not loud, but it was clear enough. It was as if she deliberately wanted the few male students who were sitting next to them to hear her. It was true that most of the male students only arrived at night. However, Cece couldn't help it when she saw that the woman's face was still so eye-catching. She wanted to let them know as soon as possible that no matter how beautiful the woman was, she was just a car mechanic. She didn't even have a graduation certificate. Cece, how could you forget? Didn't I tell you before? Li Meng pulled Cece's sleeve. She looked like she found it difficult to tell Hellion Vivian's occupation. Cece quickly waved her hand. I'm sorry, Wei Wei. I tend to make mistakes when I'm busy. Li Meng told me before that you're now repairing cars at a car shop. You have to take care of your child alone. It's really tough. In fact, if you have any difficulties, you can tell us. We'll think of a way to help you. Repairing cars? One of the male students couldn't believe it. He turned his head and asked, Wei Wei, are you really repairing cars now? She was the goddess of their school. She was a talented girl in the law department. She was better than the most handsome guy in school at that time in every subject. She was so mysterious. They thought that she had some kind of family background. They didn't expect that she was repairing cars now. Hellion Vivian was very magnanimous. She hugged Qingshan with one hand and leaned on the sofa. She crossed her slender legs and said, Yes, if you have any problems with your cars in the future, you can come to my shop to repair them. In addition to repairing cars, I have a side job. However, that side job is not suitable for you. She said that she was still a car mechanic during the day. Cece sneered in her heart. What side job? She was just pretending to be mysterious. She had heard from Li Meng that this person couldn't even afford a car. Perhaps he was even renting a house in the capital. Sigh, fate really makes fools of people. Cece sighed, Wei Wei, I thought you went abroad to study. I haven't seen you for so many years. Everyone thinks that you can work in the court. Why are you repairing cars? Hellion Vivian curved her thin lips, because compared to working in the court, I think repairing cars is more interesting. Interesting? Cece couldn't hide her amusement. But soon, she said, I heard from the professor that you haven't even gotten your graduation certificate. It's really a pity. If you still have a degree, I can help you with my resources in the industry. I can even let you be an assistant. Assistant? Qingshan remembered that when the big law firms in China heard that Beauty Vivian was going to stay in China, they sent her several contracts, but she threw them into the trash can. She didn't even look at them. The more she thought about them, the more she felt that they were hopelessly stupid. It's okay. I like my current job. I don't plan to change it. Hellion Wei Wei was telling the truth. She would repair her car during the day and catch ghosts at night. Catching ghosts usually cost at least 100,000, so it should be more profitable than going to court. The most important thing was that she could not bring little Qingshan to court, but catching ghosts was different. She would just sit there and count the money while little Qingshan would be in charge of cleaning up the ghosts. She could treat this as a form of entertainment for little Qingshan. Thinking about it this way, she could bring Shangxia along to catch ghosts in the future. Shangxia should be more powerful. Cece didn't know that Hellion Vivian didn't take her provocation to heart. She thought that Hellion Vivian was just being stubborn. She sighed pretentiously, only you can endure this pain. If it was me, I wouldn't be able to stand it. I heard that it's dirty to repair cars. Only men come in and out. You're a woman, so don't be bullied. No one can bully mommy. Qingshan reacted quickly. She understood the hidden meaning in Cece's words. She moved the devil plushie that was blocking her and looked at Cece. There was a faint light in her eyes. Only then did Cece realize that this child was extremely beautiful. Her big eyes were clear and cold, as if she was giving a warning. She had an extraordinary temperament. However, looking at her clothes, there was not a single branded item on her body. It was obvious that her family was not very good either. Vivian, this must be your son. He's so good-looking. He's quite protective of you. Du Cece chuckled and looked to the side. I heard that there was a misunderstanding between your son and Qingqing. It's really strange. Qingqing is usually the most sensible child. The few of us often go out for coffee together. Li Meng always brings Qingqing out every time. Qingqing has never caused any trouble. How did they end up fighting in school? In other words, she was trying to elevate little Fatty to reflect Helian Qingqing's ignorance. Li Meng was very generous. It's inevitable for children to have conflicts. Usually, Vivian is busy fixing the car. She doesn't have time to care about her son. Let's just forget about this matter. After all, Qingqing is 1 year older than you. You should give in to your younger brother. Do you understand? Yes, Mommy. I understand what you're saying. Little Fatty Qing answered straightforwardly in front of others. However, his eyes were full of contempt when he looked at Helian Qingqing. Li Meng then said to Du Cece, Cece, Vivian doesn't have it easy. She even wants to save on her meals. It's all for the sake of her child. You should stop talking about this matter. When little Qingqing heard this, his eyes turned extremely cold. Initially, he had planned to drag Beauty Wei Wei away. After all, the little fellow was still thinking of seeing her brother. She was not interested in these noisy humans. Now that he saw the situation, he decided that he had to stay. He was going to teach these stupid humans a lesson about the consequences of mocking his mother. However, before Qingqing could use his trick, Helian Vivian spoke. Although I don't know everything about school, I heard a little about it. It's normal for children to fight. However, we need parents to teach them how to use words. Since you're all here, as a mother, I'd like to ask on behalf of my son. Li Meng, why did your son call Qingqing a bumpkin every time he saw him? Who taught him this word? Do you even need to teach him? You're just a car mechanic. Of course, your son. Ugh, Li Meng covered little Fatty Chang's mouth before he could finish his sentence. Li Meng glared at him, and he became obedient. However, he already understood the meaning of those words just now. It was nothing more than saying that Helian Wei Wei and the others were poor. Everyone fell into an awkward silence. Everyone lowered their heads and drank their coffee to hide something. However, some of them still had a smile on their faces. It was as if they were mocking little Fatty Qing together. Chapter 953. As the person involved, Helian Vivian's smile did not disappear. Instead, the smile on her face deepened. She was holding Qingqing in her arms, and Qingqing was holding the devil plushie in her arms. Both of them had the same evil expression. A lousy car mechanic? Helian Vivian repeated the words playfully. Li Meng explained, Wei Wei, Qingqing is still young, and he doesn't mean anything else. It's just that those people on TV usually describe him like that, so he followed suit. After all, I've been too nice to him. I've always wanted him to experience the life of other families, but his father taught him to do more useful things since he was young so that he could do more business in the future. In his impression, he naturally thinks that there is no future in car mechanics. In fact, he can do any kind of work, right? This explanation was not an apology at all. It was more like she was shirking responsibility. It was as if she could not blame her son for this incident. After all, car mechanics were a profession with no future. This reminded Helian Vivian of the popular bridesmaid incident on Weibo not long ago. After the incident, some people also posted statements like this. They did not apologize properly when they should. After reading the whole article, they were shirking responsibility. But as the victim, they had to be the first to say sorry sincerely. This kind of rule was very common in society. But it did not mean that people would not speak up about it. Perhaps Li Meng thought that her family was rich and powerful, her father was in power, and she married a good man. That was why she had a different explanation for this kind of thing. Moreover, she was confident that as long as she said it, there would definitely be people seconding her. As expected, as soon as Li Meng's voice fell, the female classmate who had just eaten with her laughed. Wei Wei, you really can't blame Qingxing for this. Qingxing grew up in an excellent environment. You should also know that he is a veritable second-generation official. The people he usually meets are similar to him. Once he goes to school, he can't adapt to it. Sigh, speaking of these things, it's fate. What is the saying, no discord, no concord? If Wei Wei wasn't our classmate, Li Meng's husband might get angry and this matter would become a big deal. Fortunately, we all know each other, so it's easy to solve. Du Sisi shook her head as if it was not a big deal. Let's not talk about Li Meng's husband. Even if Qingxing's father called the police station, the nature of this matter would immediately change. You know, all schools have to give face to the old man. These words were clearly meant for Hellion Vivian. Hellion Vivian had a smile at the corner of her mouth, and her eyes were oppressive. Do you mean that because Qingxing is the son of an official, it's okay even if he humiliates the children next to him? Wei Wei, it's not a big deal. How can you say that it's a humiliation? Du Sisi wanted to make things vague. We're mainly saying that Qingxing doesn't have a bad heart. We're afraid that you'll misunderstand. That's why we mentioned Qingxing's family background. Family background? Hellion Vivian's smile grew wider. To be honest, she was not afraid of any family background. Moreover, she felt that little fatty Qing in front of her was not the son of an official. He was just the grandson of the head of a department. Although in the capital, no matter how small an official was, it was still bigger than a city-level official. However, in Hellion Wei Wei's network of connections, such officials could be easily found. Moreover, every one of them was afraid of offending her. However, no one would know about Hellion Vivian's situation. Therefore, Li Meng and Du Sisi felt that they were better than Hellion Vivian, and they were very happy. Okay, let's not talk about these things anymore. Li Meng wanted to change the topic, so she looked at Du Sisi. Why are you so late today? Didn't you say that you're busy with work? You don't look like you went to work. I didn't hear that you had a case to go to court. Du Sisi put down the coffee in her hand and fiddled with the gold chain on her left wrist with her fingers. Her face was slightly red, and she looked a little shy. I was called by my uncle at the last minute to meet the CEO of Ju Wei. Ju Wei? Not only the few female classmates next to her, but even Li Meng's eyes lit up. It's the aristocratic CEO that was reported by the media. I heard that he's very young and is even more handsome than celebrities. He came from the United Kingdom. Now, the entire film and television industry in the capital is monopolized by him. He's so powerful. Sisi, how do you know him? Did you get his phone number? Du Sisi tucked her long hair behind her ear and suppressed the pride between her eyebrows. She pretended to smile calmly. You guys, how can it be so fast? But the next time we have a meal together, he'll probably leave his number. We're not close yet. Look, you even used the word we. Li Meng pointed at her with her finger. How can we not be close when we can have a meal together? At least we've seen him before. I've heard about that person. Even if the mayor asked him out, he wouldn't show up if he didn't want to. The mayor had to go over and greet him personally. This person is almost like a Prince Charming in the eyes of many people. If he hadn't been living in seclusion, I'm afraid his limelight wouldn't be any lower than those popular male stars. Sisi, we'll have to count on you in the future. I don't understand what you're talking about. Du Sisi's face was slightly red. She deliberately made her words sound very flirtatious, as if she really knew Beligaju. In fact, she had only seen his back from afar. However, she was not afraid of being exposed because everyone here, including Li Meng, would not be able to see that handsome man. Moreover, with her uncle around, she would be able to ask him out for dinner one day. Therefore, she was not lying. Du Sisi had always been good at packaging herself. She knew how to speak without exaggeration so that she could mingle better in front of others. As soon as she finished speaking, the male students on the other side came over. Many of them wanted to see if they had the opportunity to get in touch with Zhu Wei. As long as they could get in touch with her, it would mean countless business opportunities and benefits. Just like that, because of Du Cici's words, the atmosphere in the coffee shop suddenly became lively. Everyone wanted to ask Du Cici about something. Only the mother and son who were sitting on the sofa were a little confused. They were exceptionally quiet. The excuse that Helly and Vivian had originally thought of disappeared at this moment. Qingshan, on the other hand, hugged the devil plushie and blinked twice. She raised her little face and asked Helly and Vivian, "Pretty Helly and Vivian, I didn't hear wrongly just now. Is the company she mentioned really called Zhu Wei?" "You didn't hear wrongly. She was indeed talking about Zhu Wei." Helly and Vivian reached out her hand and touched her forehead. She thought silently, this name should be quite common, right? Why did she not feel confident when she said the last word, right? Chapter 954. Last time, Big Brother said that our family is now an opera company. Because he wants to be an opera singer in the future, Dad set up a company for him to play with in advance. We were afraid that he would eat up all the opera singers in a moment of ferocity. Qingshan reached out his little hand and pushed away the devil plushie that was blocking his face. He lowered his voice and muttered to himself, "But Dad's naming skills should be better than Mom's." "Qingshan, are you questioning my aesthetic standards?" Helly and Vivian raised his beautiful eyebrows. "Also, that's not called an opera singer, it's called a star. Your brother came from ancient times. Are you from ancient times too? Please speak modern language." The little one shook his little finger very seriously. "Now, it's not a matter of aesthetic standards, it's a matter of coincidence. Anyway, Beauty Vivian, I need you to tell me that the current situation isn't what I think it is, right?" "Cough, to be honest, I think the same as you." Helly and Vivian lowered his eyes very seriously. And so, the mother and son's expressions were in sync again. It had to be said that it was a little cute. However, Qingshan seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly his eyes lit up. "Beauty Vivian, if Dad gave his phone number to another woman behind your back, what would you do?" "He hasn't given it to me yet." Helly and Vivian's voice was very languid. Qingshan said in a small voice, "Then, what about eating? Eating with another woman?" From what that auntie said just now, she seemed to have eaten with father, and it was a kind of blind date meal. Hearing this, Beauty Vivian paused, and then took out her phone. She directly opened a certain someone's WeChat and sent a few words. "I heard that you went for a blind date meal?" When Qingshan saw that Beauty Vivian sent him a WeChat message, he stared at the screen with great interest. He especially wanted to know how father would reply to this message. "Yes. Wait." Qingshan seemed to have found something very interesting. She sat in Helly and Vivian's arms obediently and cutely. After thinking for a while, she felt that she had to tell her elder brother about this matter. Therefore, she imitated Helly and Vivian and took out her small mobile phone. This kind of small phone looked fake from the outside. It was not available on the market at all. However, the core was real. There was no problem with communication. Bailey Shangxia had one, and Helly and Qingshan had one, which was used for family communication. While Qingshan was typing, his little finger poked around on the screen, and his little face unconsciously puffed up like a little bun. The more Helly and Vivian looked at him, the more amused she felt. She hugged her son and kissed him. When Bailey Shangxia received the WeChat message, he was flipping the fourth monster. Halfway through, his pocket vibrated. He kicked the monster away, then took out the small phone. After reading the content, his thin lips curled up fiercely. The monsters standing beside him were so scared that they huddled together, trembling. They were afraid that the little master would rush over and kick them away. But a miracle happened. The little master did not continue. Instead, he lowered his head and typed on the phone. Since when did the toys used by humans become so attractive to the little master? This was completely illogical. Okay. Bailey Shangxia first sent a hug emoji to his younger brother. Then, he turned around and opened his father's WeChat. He clicked on the Great Devil's profile picture and sent a provocative message. "I heard that you cheated on me." There was no reply. He should be busy. Bailey Shangxia looked at his small phone for a while, then stuffed the black gem he dug up into his pocket. He looked down at the monsters who were frightened by him. "What are you hiding for? Come and help me analyze. If my father cheated, how should I take my mother and younger brother to a faraway place?" Cheated? Of course it would be a divorce. A divorce. Wait a minute. All the monsters were stunned. What did the little master just say? The master cheated? Where did he cheat from? Also, even if the master really cheated, the little master was so happy and excited that he immediately wanted to take the whole family away from home. What was going on? That's your biological father, right? Being a cheater for 10,000 years would not change his nature. All the monsters in the demon world were temporarily summoned to the first prison by Bailey Shangxia to discuss countermeasures against the master's cheating. This was simply impossible. They could not find the meaning of this meeting at all. Helplessly, Bailey Shangxia was very excited. "I want to go back to the human world and see which woman my father is eating with. Then I will send a photo to my mother." All the monsters. "If you really do that, you will definitely be hung on the wall by the master and given a good beating." Bailey Shangxia was never afraid of chaos in the world. He packed his things and prepared to return to the human world. In the afternoon, the warm sun cast a brilliant golden light into the blue sky. Bathed in the soft light, the Zhu Wei group looked even more extraordinary. The highest floor of the Hua Huang building in the capital was completely open. The luxurious conference room at the top was enough to accommodate hundreds of people. On the low-key and minimalistic office table were the documents that had just been sent by the Ministry of Commerce. The media had not left yet. They stayed in the reception hall downstairs, still hesitant, and kept craning their necks to look at the stairs. Many people did not even have the chance to see the face of the master, let alone interview him. Everyone could not help but feel a sense of regret, but they did not give up. Because as long as they got a photo, even if it was a little blurry, there was a chance that they could make today's headlines. Beligaju had never accepted interviews. This time, when he returned to the capital, they did not have to worry about the man's status. They could take photos if they wanted. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They had to seize this opportunity. Unlike the eager media, all the senior executives of the Zhu Wei group were restless in their seats. The weather was not hot yet, but their foreheads were overflowing with sweat. It was not because of anything else, but because of the man sitting at the head of the table. His long and slender legs were crossed under the table. That beautiful curve formed a strong contrast with the hard lines of the table. His appearance was extremely handsome. His eyes were as deep as the sea, containing endless depth and wisdom. He had a high nose bridge, light thin lips, and an extraordinary noble temperament. However, it was so deep that it made everyone feel pressured. Just when many of the senior executives thought that they would die without a complete corpse, something seemed to ring. It was the sound of a WeChat notification. Who was it? Who did not put their phone on silent mode? They were simply trying to kill them. Chapter 955. The executives of Zhu Wei Group looked around as if they were facing a formidable enemy. They looked rather irritable, as if they were saying that they would not beat him half to death if he showed up. In the end, they saw the man turn his head and a phone appeared in his left hand. A second WeChat message came from the phone. The ringtone was very clear. The executives were all stunned. Since when did Chairman Zhu bring his phone into the meeting room? Most importantly, they had always thought that Chairman Zhu was someone who did not have WeChat because all the communication work was done by Assistant Long. They had never seen a man using WeChat before. Most importantly, because of a single text message, the oppressive feeling just now seemed to have disappeared. There seemed to be a flash of gentleness in Chairman Ju's eyes. They must have seen it wrongly. This man was like a demon who never gave his opponents any way out in the business world. How could he be so gentle? Continue. The man lowered his eyes and scrolled through the screen as he gave the order. His voice was filled with coldness, and President Du suddenly came back to his senses. Chairman Ju, I didn't think it through enough this time. That's why I went against your wishes. I wanted to use your return to boost our momentum. I didn't expect that Special Assistant Long wouldn't even give me a chance to explain myself. He just asked me to submit my resignation letter. Du Cici's uncle was obviously the same as Du Cici. He would spread the news as soon as he found out something. More than half of the executives thought that the man would do something immediately. But he did not. The only thing the man did was look at WeChat. Under the light, no one knew what he saw. The executives of Ju Wei Group saw his indifferent lips curl up slightly, and his eyes were filled with a faint gentleness. Was Chairman Ju smiling? The people present were all elderly. They could not help but take out the eye drops that they always carried with them and started to drip them. After 2 drops, they saw the man's slender fingers tapping back and forth on the screen. A blind date? I've only had a blind date with you. I've never had a blind date with anyone else. Wei Wei, is this considered as checking up on me? Obviously, His Highness was very happy to receive this kind of WeChat message. This also meant that someone cared about him. CEO Du looked at their experienced chairman with a hint of a smile in his eyes, but his face was calm and indifferent. For a moment, he couldn't understand how the other party saw him. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows when she received the reply. She had no intention of asking for more details. She understood His Highness's character. If he hadn't eaten it, then he hadn't eaten it. However, you've eaten the matchmaking meal when you were in Tiandao. At that time, you clearly came to Buddhism every day to eat vegetarian and recite Buddhist scriptures. Helene Vivian recalled those days and sent him a WeChat message. This time, Beligaju's reply came quickly. You think I'm going there to be vegetarian and recite Buddhist scriptures? I was obviously going to meet a certain phoenix. Every day, in order to see a certain phoenix, I had to force myself to listen to those boring Sanskrit chants. Unfortunately, this stupid phoenix only knew how to sleep under a tree every day. She didn't understand the thoughts of others at all. When she saw me, she even took out a knife and wanted to fight with me. Since she was so stupid, shouldn't I catch her and teach her a lesson? Helene Wei Wei did not know how to reply to his question. She even felt a little blush on her cheeks and her heart was racing. Even the memory in her mind was giving off a sweet aftertaste. She did not type anything and simply let the phone screen dim. Qingshen was watching from the side. She held her little forehead like a little adult and said, Beauty Wei Wei, you're that stupid phoenix, right? Father has had designs on you for so long, but you didn't realize it. Your father is very cold and aloof. I really didn't feel that he treated me differently at that time. Helene Vivian seriously defended herself for being slow. Think about it. Who would have a person with designs on you enter your room and look at you as if you have germs on you? Don't come near me. No one would think that he has feelings for me, right? Qingshen chuckled. Then tell me, if father didn't have designs on you, why did he enter your room? Is father the kind of man who casually enters other people's rooms? Helene Vivian. She actually had no words to refute that. In the other conference room, Beligaju waited for a few seconds but didn't get a new reply. He raised his thick eyebrows and swiped open another WeChat message with his fair and slender fingers. He originally had a casual posture, but after seeing the content, he couldn't help but frown. I heard that you cheated. Cheated? Beligaju didn't like this word. It was one thing to be checked by Wei Wei, but it was another thing to be suspected of cheating. However, Wei Wei would never ask him this kind of thing for no reason. Something must have happened. Beligaju didn't waste any time and made a call. If you want to come back before dinner, you better tell me everything you know. Otherwise, I don't mind letting you stay underground for a while, Bailey Shangxia. I have an appointment with my younger brother to have dinner together. When Bailey Shangxia said this, he took a step forward and stepped on the leg of a big monster. His expression was particularly vicious. Oh. Beligaju's light-colored lips curved slightly and he was extremely scheming. What does that have to do with me? Shameless, too shameless. Bailey Shangxia knew that his imperial father had something on him again, so he coolly told Beligaju the news that he had heard today. At the end of the call, he didn't forget to make a dig at his imperial father. Father, aren't you afraid that imperial mother will be angry and make you look for her for another 3 years? This last sentence made the coldness brewing in the depths of Bailey Jiaju's eyes burst out in a flash. Even through the phone, Bailey Shangxia could feel his imperial father's demonic aura. The sound from the phone had turned into the sound of static. It was obvious that his phone had malfunctioned because of his imperial father. The senior management of Zhu Wei Group didn't know what had happened because Chairman Zhu had only said one sentence. However, they could clearly feel that the man's aura had changed again. It had become bone-chilling and cold. That kind of coldness was not like the oppressive feeling of a normal man, but a heavy sense of suffocation. The senior management saw him put down his phone and a strange smile appeared on his face. It was a smile, but not only did it not make people feel any warmth, it was very cold. He raised his eyes and glanced at Senior Manager Du, who was still standing. The coldness in his eyes began to surge slowly. I heard that Manager Du has a pretty niece. Or is she studying law? Chapter 956. Manager Du was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. Not knowing what was going on, he tried his best to suppress his excitement and said, I didn't expect you to know her too, Chairman Zhu. That girl is indeed pretty and has excellent professional knowledge. I was going to recommend her to be our company's legal consultant this time. Is that so? 2 words were said casually. Senior Du hastily nodded his head. Yes, if it's her. The obvious smile on Senior Du's face suddenly froze when he saw the cold glint in Bailey Jiaju's eyes. What is going on? Manager Du did not understand what was going on. Sweat broke out on his back. Why is the CEO looking at me like that? He tried to figure out what the man was thinking, but he could not figure it out. However, Bailey Jiaju only looked at him with a cold expression. His mockery was so obvious that Senior Du's expression became somewhat unnatural when he looked at him. Manager Du laughed awkwardly. Chairman Zhu, what's wrong? Beligaju played with the phone in his hand and suddenly smiled. You said that Qing Long asked you to write a resignation letter? Yes, this matter itself is unreasonable. Manager Du felt that he finally saw hope. He thought that the CEO did not hear his resignation letter when he sent the WeChat message. This time, he finally had a chance to turn things around. Bailey Jiaju's handsome face tilted slightly toward Qing Long's direction. Since when is it someone else's turn to make decisions for the important matters of the Zhu Wei Group? Qing Long, you only asked Manager Du to write a resignation letter and you plan to let him go? You've been too lazy recently. Yes. Unsurprisingly, Qing Long lowered his eyes and executed the posture of a special assistant. Manager Du, who thought that he would be rehabilitated, was completely stunned. Wait a minute, is there something wrong? The man's smile was still elegant and indifferent. He leaned back and said in an extremely elegant and slow voice, release the news now. From today onwards, Du Dui is officially fired by the Zhu Wei Group. No matter when, as long as Du Dui is in the company, the Zhu Wei Group will not cooperate with them and will even suppress them. So, be kind and tell your colleagues not to do anything irrational. Bailey Jiaju said this sentence very politely, but his hidden words were basically saying that in the future, whoever dared to hire Du Dui, he would kill that person. Many of the senior executives of the Zhu Wei Group shuddered. They had always known that the president was capable. Even his threats were so well-mannered. Other than his means, he was also very scheming. He was simply invincible. Du Dui had kicked an iron plate this time. He had already said to listen to Executive Assistant Long, but he was so disobedient. The senior executives looked at each other. In order to avoid becoming the next target of the president, they began to work hard to reduce their presence, although they still did not know why the president was so angry. Du Dui, who had been forced into a dead end, was even more clueless about what had gone wrong. Chairman Zhu, it's for the sake of the company that I want to hire a legal consultant. Even if you want to fire me, you don't have to be so ruthless, right? What's wrong with me working for the company? Working for the company? Beligaju stood up from his office chair. He placed one hand on the table and slowly lowered his upper body. Don't make it sound so beautiful. The thing I hate the most is people who want to interfere with my private affairs. Besides, who told you that I'm single? Isn't that so? This sentence was not asked by Du Dui, but by many of the senior executives sitting in the conference room. They knew that Chairman Zhu had a son, but he only had a son. The young master's face and temperament were like a money tree. He had come to the company twice, and each time, it was unforgettable. However, they had never seen a woman appear by Chairman Zhu's side. For an entire year, he did not even have a scandal partner. If he was not single, what was he? Their guess was that the young master might just be the product of Chairman Zhu's womanizing when he was young. He must have been accidentally left behind by Chairman Zhu, and had nothing to do with sex. Therefore, how could Chairman Zhu not be single? In the conference room, the gazes that were fixed on Beligaju became more and more heated. It was obvious that no matter how old a person was or what position they were in, they could not beat the heart of gossip. As the center of attention, Beligaju was very calm. His voice was as indifferent as before. I've been married for 3 years, and my wife loves me very much. Married? Married. All the senior executives in the conference room were dumbfounded. Du Dui was even more dumbfounded. How could he be married? This news was undoubtedly a bombshell. It was so explosive that the steady higher-ups couldn't help but want to ask who that person was. Who was the person who was married to the chairman? Also, wouldn't most people say that they loved their wife very much? Why was it the complete opposite when it came to Chairman Zhu? Perhaps only Chairman Zhu could say that his wife loved him very much. Beligaju did not care about the reactions of the people around him. He walked to Du Dui's side. As he walked past him, the invisible darkness surged out. I heard that Chairman Du wants to arrange a meal for me and your niece. Don't worry, this wish of yours will come true very soon. Du Dui didn't understand what Bailey Jia Ju meant. He only knew that as soon as the news was announced, his career for the rest of his life would be completely over. The only thing that Du Dui could think of was to beg the man to take back the idea. However, Bailey Jia Ju did not even spare him a glance. He dropped a bombshell and ended the meeting with a soft voice. The reporters who were still waiting outside heard the door of the conference room being pushed open from the inside. They could not help but look in the direction of the sound. A tall and slender figure came into view. Everyone fell silent in an instant. They stared blankly at the man who appeared. Their eyes were filled with amazement and admiration. Following his appearance, the brilliance of the entire afternoon quickly dimmed. He was extremely handsome. His eyes were as deep as the sea, containing thousands of stars and endless wisdom. There was an indescribable grace about him. He looked very much like a vampire aristocrat in the movies. Every move of his was filled with a dark aura. The reporters could not help but want to surround him. However, they did not dare to take a step forward because of the man's noble and powerful aura. Chapter 957. Bailey Jia Ju's footsteps didn't stop at all, as if all the lights in his eyes were a product of habit. He indifferently passed through the path that the bodyguards made in front of him, and walked toward the elevator entrance. Behind him, other than Qing Long, there was also Fire Qilin in a suit. The reporters wouldn't have any chance to interview him, so Azure Dragon was left behind to deal with the aftermath. Before he even walked out of the building, Beligaju dialed Bailey Shangxia's number for the second time. Bailey Shangxia, the troublemaker, was still figuring out how to get hold of his father's weakness in the devil realm. When his phone rang, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a cool expression, "Hello? If you want to return to the human world now, then give your mother a call immediately. Tell her that you want to see her." When facing his son, Beligaju didn't hide his true intentions at all. Bailey Shangxia narrowed his blood-red eyes. "Mother is still at a class reunion right now. If I see her, I'll disturb her." "Dad, just admit it. You clearly want to see her yourself, then go to her class reunion to see if there are any potential love rivals." "Little Bailey Shangxia, have I ever taught you that sometimes being too smart isn't a good thing?" Beligaju's voice was very light, but there was a special kind of evil in it. "I don't want to hear any more of your guesses. Call her now if you still want to leave the demon world." Bailey Shangxia puffed up his cheeks in anger. "Since you want to see her, why don't you call her yourself? If I'm the one making this call, then what's the use of having you?" Beligaju paused for a moment before adding, "If you perform well this time, you can stay in the human world for a month. I won't threaten you with going to the demon world for a while. What do you think?" Bailey Shangxia's eyes flashed. "Deal. As long as his father doesn't threaten him with going to the demon world, he can take his mother and run away from home." "That's it, that's right." However, his father was too shameless. He only knew how to use him. Regarding this, Beligaju didn't have the slightest bit of guilt. He turned to Fire Qilin and said, "Have you found the location of the class reunion?" Fire Qilin nodded. How could they not find out? Ever since they found out that Wang Fei was going to attend the class reunion, they began to understand the situation. The Princess Consort is drinking coffee now. In another half an hour, they will go to the Imperial Sky Hotel for dinner. The Imperial Sky Hotel is also one of Zhu Wei's properties. The Shadow is in charge of that place. Very good. Bailey Jiaju's lips curved into a smile, contrasting with his pitch-black pupils, forming a deep and cold phoenix tail line. On the other hand, Hellion Vivian didn't know that His Highness was planning to come over now. After all, they had agreed to wait until everything was over before he came to pick her up. Hence, Hellion Vivian was still sitting in the cafe, studying the WeChat message with Qingchen. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness would never lie in this aspect. However, when did he set up the Zhu Wei group? As the first successor and First Lady, Hellion Vivian and Qingchen expressed that they would need to search the internet to find out how much the Zhu Wei group could fetch if they sold it. Forgive this pair of mother and son, they were money grubbers. However, Du Cece, who didn't know anything about this, looked at Hellion Vivian's side profile and smiled faintly. "Look at how you guys are always talking about me and neglecting Wei Wei." Hearing this, the girls looked at each other and laughed again. "Wei Wei, look at how confused you are. You probably don't know who the CEO Zhu is, right? It's a pity that you don't know about this since you usually repair cars. The Zhu Wei Group's properties are spread all over the world. He is a real business tycoon. If Cece really gets together with him, it will be difficult for us to even see Cece in the future." "What are you guys talking about? Am I, Du Cece, the kind of person who is vain?" Du Cece took a sip of coffee. With Wei Wei's current profession, it's normal that you haven't heard of the CEO Zhu's name. However, Wei Wei, if you have the chance in the future, you can come and look for me. Who knows, you might be able to meet the CEO Zhu. Hellion Vivian still didn't say anything. She just looked at Du Cece with a languid expression. There was an obvious interest in her eyes. It seemed like she was mocking or ridiculing her. Du Cece's expression became a little unnatural when she looked at Du Cece. What's wrong with this woman? She seems to be able to see through people. In the past, Du Cece didn't like Hellion Vivian's gaze. When they were in school, everyone tried to curry favor with her and wanted to have a good relationship with her. Only this Hellion Wei Wei, although she did not say anything, but that kind of indifferent look in her eyes would make people feel uncomfortable. When they were in school, it wasn't that Cece didn't think of ways to isolate Hellion Vivian. The results were very good. This was because Hellion Vivian, who was popular with boys, was always a little hateful in the eyes of the other female students. However, in Hellion Vivian's eyes, this kind of thing was like a clown's prank. She didn't care about Hellion Vivian at all. Even if she was isolated by the other people in the dormitory, Hellion Vivian didn't seem to care about it at all. At first, Cece thought that Hellion Vivian didn't know anything and was just too cold-blooded. However, when they were in class again, Hellion Vivian looked at her with a mocking gaze. It was as if Hellion Vivian had seen through everything. Hellion Vivian's gaze at that time was just like how it was now. Cece secretly clenched the coffee cup in her hand. What kind of joke is this? What right does Hellion Vivian have to mock me now? She's just a lousy car mechanic who has a son who doesn't even know his father. How can such a woman be qualified to look at me condescendingly? Cece changed her mind and said, speaking of blind dates, Wei, it's really hard for you to raise a child by yourself now. Have you ever thought of finding someone to take care of you? Wei, don't blame me for being blunt. We're all old classmates. I'm saying this for your own good. Back then, you were a talented law student in our faculty. Many people would worship you whenever you looked back and smiled. But now, we're not young anymore. You have a child by your side. Don't be too picky. If you continue to be picky, it'll be too late for regrets when you're old. How are you going to live in the future? You can't just rely on your car repair job. Cece, you're right. Li Meng looked at Cece's eyes and smiled. Wei, no matter what you did in the past, it's all in the past now. The resources we know here are all good. If you really can't do it, we still have the resources from our male classmates. We can ask them out to meet you. With Wei's appearance, it's still possible to find an ordinary worker. However, since you have a son, you have to lower your expectations. Chapter 958. I have a good candidate here. Cece put down the coffee cup in her hand. Her gaze was leisurely, and there was a hidden meaning in her smile. He's a colleague from our law firm. Although he's only an assistant now, there's a high possibility that he'll be promoted to a full member in the future. Although he's a little chubby, he's very down-to-earth and knows how to work. He's quite a good match for Wei. After the gathering is over, I'll introduce him to Wei. Hello? You're at the Emperor Hotel? Let's go there now. Cece was very gentle when she was on the phone, and there was even a smile on her face. She nodded while putting the things into her bag. After exchanging a few pleasantries, she ended the call. Then, she said to the dozen or so classmates in the coffee shop, the private rooms at the hotel are ready. Senior Shao is waiting for us. Let's go over now. Hurry up and pack up. Hearing the name of Senior Shao, a few of the female classmates were moved even though they were no longer students. Li Meng did not forget her initial purpose. During this class reunion, she wanted to completely embarrass Hellion Vivian in front of that man. Now that everyone was present, the show was about to begin. Li Meng turned her head and exchanged a glance with Cece. The two of them were well aware of what they wanted to do. The female classmate at the side was inevitably excited. Senior Shao has never participated in a class reunion before. Why is he here this time? He picked up Li Meng's call and specially flew back from abroad. It's really difficult to meet young Master Shao. Cece smiled and walked out. She did not forget to reveal a little something in her words. Fortunately, we all live in the same military compound, so we can get together once during the new year. The people around them were discussing the appearance of Senior Shao. Only Qinshan was holding her devil plushie shakily and asked her mother in a low voice, Beauty Wei, why didn't you tell them that the CEO Jew that you've never heard of before is actually my father? Little Qinshan, I think you saw it. Before I could say anything, they were already planning to change locations. Helene Vivian smiled and picked up her son. What's more, aren't you curious about what happened between Miss Du and His Highness? Qingchen. You're the one who's curious. Also, pretty Wei Wei, did you know that the corners of your eyes were very cold when you said that? Qingchen was carried out of the coffee shop by his mother. Because he was not able to walk steadily, his face was adorable. Li Meng stopped and said to Helene Vivian, Vivian, don't you have a car? Do you want to take my car? It's not far, only about 10 minutes, but it's a bit far if you walk. Qingchen and Qingqing can talk in the car. Little Fatty Cheng, who was called out, glanced at Helene Qingchen. When the male students heard that Helene Vivian did not have a car, they also stopped. Helene Vivian looked at the smile on Li Meng's face. She knew very well what Li Meng's intention was. However, Helene Vivian would never take this kind of boring comparison to heart. She calmly hugged Qingchen and said, It's okay, I came here by bike. It's very fast. Bike? Du Cece turned around, as if she had never heard the word bike before. Li Meng continued, Wei Wei has a motorcycle. Alright, let's meet at the Royal Hotel. Motorcycle? Some of the students looked at Helene Vivian with a different expression. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. Why? Is it strange to have a motorcycle? No, it's not strange. We just didn't expect you to be so poor. The female students smiled awkwardly. The male students also understood in their hearts. They turned around and continued to walk to the parking lot. Obviously, they had been brainwashed by Du Cece and Li Meng's words. They thought that Helene Vivian's motorcycle was similar to a delivery motorcycle. However, they did not expect that Helene Vivian was riding a limited edition BMW Tomahawk that every man wanted. Since the parking lot was different, they did not know much about Helene Vivian until they arrived at the Royal Hotel. However, they originally thought that Helene Vivian would be late because she was riding a motorcycle. Unexpectedly, when they walked into the lobby, Helene Vivian was already waiting there. Her waist-length chestnut hair was as beautiful as seaweed. Standing in the middle, she was very eye-catching. All the students had to admit that no matter how poor she was, her beauty had seeped into every detail with the passage of time. They could not help but chase after her. A large number of students were brought in by Xiao Zifeng. Du Cece and Li Meng bent their heads and were talking to him. The man was undoubtedly very good-looking. His well-ironed suit outlined his elegance perfectly. His voice was also low. It was not difficult to see the charm that he was exuding. Although he was not talking to Li Meng, there was a faint blush on Li Meng's face. Suddenly, Xiao Zifeng stopped in his tracks. His good-looking deep eyes stared at a spot in the lobby. There was an obvious fluctuation in his eyes. Others could not see this, but Li Meng, who was standing next to him, saw it clearly. The shyness in her heart immediately turned into unwillingness and jealousy. Before Xiao Zifeng walked over to greet them, Li Meng and Du Cece walked in front of Helene Vivian. Vivian, we didn't expect you to arrive earlier than us. The car is fast. Helene Vivian's voice had always been very calm. However, what she said this time was true. The BMW Tomahawk speed was much faster than many luxury cars. Li Meng did not care whether her car was fast or not. It was just a broken motorcycle, and a second-hand one at that. However, this second-hand motorcycle was something that Xiao Zifeng could not forget until now. Why? Thinking of this, Li Meng smiled and looked back at Xiao Zifeng. Zifeng, you haven't seen Vivian for a long time, right? It wasn't easy for me to invite her here. She's having a hard time raising a child by herself. Du Cece and I were just talking about introducing someone to her. If you have any good resources, share them with us. Good resources? Xiao Zifeng smiled and his eyes dimmed. Let me think about it. Did she already have a child? Xiao Zifeng could not imagine that anyone would be willing to abandon Helene Vivian after getting her. Was he too late? Chapter 959. No, it was not too late. Xiao Zifeng stared at the person in front of him. He had been waiting for this person for 5 years. In those 5 years, he had used all kinds of methods to look for her. He had even used his family's connections. However, he still could not find her. That year was probably the year when he was least motivated. He regretted not telling this person that he liked her when they were still in school. Since the first time she had surpassed him in her oral exam, he could not help but fall in love with this woman. Although he did not say it out loud, those who were familiar with him knew that he had Hellion Vivian in his heart. Originally, he thought that this love was just a youthful obsession. After all, it was because the other party's professional knowledge was better than his that he slowly took her to heart. In the beginning, their relationship was not very harmonious. He could not find a way to get close to her. There were too many people around him, and he couldn't even properly dispel this kind of fondness. Xiao Zifeng thought that as long as he got close to any talented woman, it might be destroyed because of all kinds of things. Perhaps he would not like her. He would like her so much that his heart would heat up because he could see her today. Xiao Zifeng had been a very thoughtful person since he was young. It was related to his family background. He was much more mature than his peers and knew what he wanted in the future. Hellion Wei was probably the only variable that he had encountered so far. He wanted to suppress this change, so he planned to get close to Hellion Vivian. However, the closer he got, the more he could not control himself. At that time, he knew that he was done for. Du Cixi saw through Xiao Zifeng's feelings clearly. They lived in the same compound. She used to like this son of a major general in the military compound. In her impression, this person was very calm no matter what he did. Although they lived in the same courtyard, the other party's status was much higher than hers. He was undoubtedly the leader of the youngest generation in the entire military compound. Even those who came from the military compound had to call him Master Xiao. However, such a man actually asked her one day if she had Hellion Vivian's contact information with trembling eyes. That day, Du Cixi was still happy that she was able to invite him to her birthday party. Xiao Zifeng's words were like a basin of cold water that extinguished all her thoughts. From that day onwards, Du Cixi, who originally disliked Hellion Vivian, hated this woman even more. At that time, she and Li Meng were already very close. She knew that her good friend also liked Xiao Zifeng, so she intentionally leaked the news to him. Sure enough, the effect appeared quickly. With Li Meng's help, they successfully stopped most of the female students from talking to Hellion Wei. Especially in the dormitory, ostracizing someone would hurt her the most. No matter how strong Hellion Vivian was, it would be difficult for her to escape the envelopment of this air. During that period of time, Du Cixi was very happy. However, this happiness turned into jealousy that had never disappeared after seeing Xiao Zifeng's current gaze. She and Li Meng looked at each other and laughed. Zifeng, you have to think about it carefully. The people around you won't do. You have to find someone who is compatible with you. You probably don't know that Wei went to repair cars after she left school. She can't be in this line of work now. Don't find some rich young master for her. I'm afraid that she will be bullied. Cixi, you're so thoughtful. Why didn't I think of this? With Wei's current situation, she won't be able to fit in even if she finds someone with a good family background. Li Meng looked at Xiao Zifeng. Why don't I? No need. Before Li Meng could finish her words, Hellion Vivian smiled and interrupted her. Her voice was very clear, with a unique smile that smashed into everyone's heart. I already have a boyfriend. You can forget about the idea of introducing someone to me. Xiao Zifeng's gaze froze. He could no longer say the words, see if I'm suitable or not. He could only look at Hellion Vivian with mixed emotions. When the bitterness in his heart reached the tip of his tongue, it actually stung a little. Unlike Xiao Zifeng's feelings, Li Meng's thoughts were very direct. She had sent people to ask around in school. The teachers and the teaching director said that Hellion Vivian even went through the procedures for her son by herself. They had never seen her with anyone before. Even her file stated that she was unmarried. How could she find a boyfriend in just 2 days? Li Meng obviously did not believe it. She looked at Hellion Vivian's expression and the reactions of the people around her. She clenched her fingers and said, Wei Wei, I know that you don't want us to worry about you with so many people around. But you don't have to use this method. You should give yourself a chance. I see that you've been taking care of Qingshan alone. How did you suddenly have a boyfriend? After Li Meng said that, the other students looked at Hellion Vivian and started to make all kinds of guesses. After all, in this day and age, some people would make up some unfounded lies to escape. Obviously, they thought that Hellion Vivian was too prideful and did not want to appear too down in front of them. That was why she said that she had a boyfriend. In fact, this boyfriend might not even exist. With this thought in mind, the expressions of the students changed. Du Cece immediately said, Wei Wei, it's okay to be single. We understand how you feel. You're already an adult and you don't want others to know that you're raising a child alone. But all in all, it's an opportunity. Since everyone is here and we have plenty of resources, why are you so shy? Du Cece's words sounded like nothing at first. However, people who had been in society for a long time knew that there was a mystery brewing behind it. In fact, it was not very comfortable. Hellion Vivian naturally understood what she meant. However, she had no intention of communicating with this kind of person. Moreover, the phone in her bag rang. It was little Shangxia again. Hellion Vivian did not have the time to care about Du Cece anymore. She turned sideways and answered the call. Mom, I want to look for you and little brother. I miss you. Bailey Shangxia's voice was very cool and sounded a little unnatural. In fact, when he received someone's order, he was even more determined to run away from home. Bailey Shangxia glanced at the person beside him. He was still reading the piece of paper in his hand. He paused after every word. I'll ask Dad to send me over, okay? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. Now? Yes, now. Because it seems that the girls have miscalculated the update time, I reverted to updating between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. every day. Chapter 960. Bailey Shangxia tried his best to not sound so cool, but the effect was not good. The words that came out of his mouth were still a little cold. Is it inconvenient for mommy to have a gathering? Hellion Vivian did not speak. Qingshan, who was standing beside her, tugged on her jeans. Hellion Vivian subconsciously bent down to cooperate with her son. Qingshan's cheeks were still puffed up. She hugged the demon plushie in her hands and said obediently to the other side of the phone, I miss Big Brother too. When I went to school today, the teacher caught me daydreaming during English class. Hearing his younger brother's voice, Bailey Shangxia did not need to read the piece of paper in his hand anymore. His little face was very cool. Be good, wait for me to come over. Hellion Vivian, can these two little fellows not decide the adult's itinerary without permission? Of course, Beligaju would not allow his son to continue wasting time like this, because this excuse was not enough. Hence, a certain highness took the phone. His low and deep voice was very pleasant to the ear. Vivian, Shangxia has been clamoring to see you. It's probably because he was injured after returning from the demon world, but he didn't want to tell me. That's why he wants to look for you and Qingshan. Bailey Shangxia, all the demons. The one who was injured was not Little Master, it was us, okay. Little Master was domineering and cold now, and he even looked like he was stepping on a demon. How did he look like he was injured? Bailey Shangxia had always thought that his imperial father was very shameless. After all, he would always use the trick of injuring himself to gain sympathy with his imperial mother. However, he had never thought that he would also be the victim of that trick. He was so shameless that there was no bottom line. Beligaju calmly said what he wanted to say, completely ignoring his son's disdainful gaze. To a certain highness, getting the result he wanted was the most important thing. As expected, when Hellion Vivian heard that her son was injured, she immediately said, okay, then come over. That's right, I'm at the Emperor Hotel. Call me when you arrive and I'll go out. How could Du Cece and Li Meng let Helly and Vivian go at this time? They interrupted and asked, Wei Wei, who is it? You want to leave first? That won't do. The professor will be here soon. Back then, the professor was very good to you. You can't just leave like that. We still need to gather and have a heart-to-heart talk later. How can you leave without eating? Helly and Vivian was still holding her phone. She raised her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes turned cold. Is he her boyfriend? Someone guessed. He looks like a boyfriend. Some of her classmates were still very nice, especially some of the female students who took Helly and Vivian as their role model. Now that they saw Helly and Vivian, they always had an indescribable feeling. Facing these people, Helly and Vivian smiled generously. He's my boyfriend. Is he coming to pick you up now? Some of her classmates were envious. You're so happy. Hearing this, Du Cece changed her mind. Since he's her boyfriend, let him come over for a meal. We're all classmates, so there's no need to be so distant. She wanted to see what Helly and Vivian's boyfriend looked like. She reckoned that a lousy car mechanic like her wouldn't be able to find a decent man. Unlike her, the people she introduced were all good resources. For example, the person her uncle introduced to her would definitely be much better than her boyfriend. Yes, Wei Wei. Since he's your boyfriend and he's coming, let him come up for a meal. Li Meng smiled. Or is it that your boyfriend is too shameful and you don't want everyone to see him? The phone in Helly and Vivian's hand was still connected. The man was sitting in the extended version of the luxury long-distance running car with his legs slightly crossed. He could clearly hear the conversation on the other end. His pair of deep eyes sank. He put aside the business magazine in his hand. Wei Wei, who are you talking to? No one, we're all classmates. Helly and Vivian retracted her gaze from Li Meng and Du Cece. Her tone was neither fast nor slow. Beligaju smiled. His voice was still pleasant to the ears, but what was hidden underneath was the cunning and bloodthirsty unique to demons. Since your classmate invited me, it shouldn't be a problem for you to bring a family member along, right? Is there a family member as big as you? According to Helly and Vivian's character, she wouldn't waste her time on such meaningless things like showing off her boyfriend. On the contrary, she felt that it was better for His Highness to hide at home. Otherwise, if someone were to covet His Highness's beauty, she would have to think of a way to get rid of them. She always felt that the loss outweighed the gain. That's right. Helly and Vivian was still very domineering in certain aspects. Du Cece saw that Helly and Vivian didn't have any intention of bringing her boyfriend along. She was afraid that she would miss this opportunity to ridicule her. So, she said, Wei Wei, don't feel pressured to bring your boyfriend along. Li Meng's husband will be joining us later. Our gathering this time is very big, and we are allowed to bring family members. So, Wei Wei, if you continue to refuse, we will start to doubt whether your boyfriend is real or not. This is just an excuse you came up with when we talked about introducing a boyfriend to you. Helly and Vivian turned her head and said coldly, Du Cece, you are a lawyer. When the professor taught us in the past, he didn't teach us these messy ideas. So, all these years, you've been carrying this kind of idea in your lawsuit? Helly and Vivian had always had a queen-like aura around her. It all depended on whether she would use it or not. From the moment they met until now, she had been hugging her son. Many people thought that she would restrain herself because of her undignified profession. Who would have thought that her temperament would be revealed inadvertently like this? At that moment, Du Cece felt a sense of oppression. She pretended to be pitiful and said, Wei Wei, I don't mean anything else. I'm just joking. Why can't you take a joke? A joke is to make everyone feel happy, not to judge others based on your thoughts. Helly and Vivian's every word made Du Cece speechless. Du Cece didn't expect that after all these years of cultivation, she still couldn't compare to Helly and Vivian. In the past, she couldn't win against her in debates. Why is this woman still so eloquent? Wei Wei, aren't you a little too sensitive? The female classmate who wanted to use this class reunion to get closer to Du Cece naturally wouldn't let Du Cece be at a disadvantage. Cece just doesn't want to spoil everyone's mood. It's rare for us to gather together, but you're in a hurry to leave. What's the meaning of this? April 19, 2016, 18:40 p.m. If you can't see the latest update, please refresh the page. Chapter 961. Alright. Li Meng tried to smooth things over. We all have the same thoughts. I hope it'll be more lively. Wei Wei, Cece is right. My husband will be here later. What's your boyfriend's job? Maybe we can sit down and eat together. My husband is usually very busy. If there's a good project, he can bring everyone to work together. Then, you won't have to work so hard. Don't be so secretive. On the surface, it sounded like nothing, but in fact, Li Meng used a charitable tone from the beginning to the end. It was very obvious that she had already imagined Helian Wei Wei's boyfriend to be the most basic type of person. She was implying that her own husband could lead everyone to become rich. Originally, Li Meng didn't want her husband to come along when she came to see Xiao Zifeng. But now, she didn't think so. Although her husband wasn't very good-looking, his family background was first class. He even had cooperation with the Xiao family. In addition, he often appeared in financial news. Everyone here knew him. Everyone who came to work wanted to be their own boss. Presumably, Helian Vivian's boyfriend was the same. When that person came and saw her husband, he would naturally lower his attitude. When that time came, Helian Vivian would definitely feel bad when she saw her boyfriend fawning over other men. This was the only way to thoroughly humiliate Helian Wei Wei to the core. Thinking of this, Li Meng faintly felt a sense of victory in her heart. How could Helian Vivian not understand the meaning behind her words? The corners of her mouth curled up with a hint of sarcasm. Then, she said to the phone, "Do you want to come up and have a meal with us?" Helian Vivian thought that His Highness would definitely refuse with his personality. Back in Tiandao, when they were together, once someone invited him to a heavenly banquet, he would immediately give it to them. He handed the invitation to her and then continued to read his ancient scroll with one hand propping up his chin. His Highness obviously couldn't be tempted by delicious food. But this time, unexpectedly, the man's noble voice could be heard through the phone. Okay. So straightforward? Helian Vivian raised her eyebrows and put down the phone. She smiled at her classmates and said, "He'll be here soon." In reality, she didn't care how the people around her looked at her. Helian Wei Wei indeed also wanted to see her benefactor who brought her along that year. Otherwise, she would have already ridden her BMW Tomahawk and left, and wouldn't waste time here. When Li Meng and Du Cece saw that things were going according to their plan, their smiles became even wider. With the two of them working together, when Helian Vivian's poor boyfriend came later, they would definitely let him know the difference between them. Qingshan was standing at the side. As a genius with an IQ that exceeded his age, he could clearly see the performance of these two women. However, Qingshan wasn't in the mood to care about them. Right now, he only had one thought in his mind, and that was that his brother was coming. When he thought of this, Qingshan felt very happy. When he was happy, he became even cuter. The ahog on his little head stood up, and his cheeks were puffed up. He was holding the devil doll that he wanted to give to Bailey Shangxia with one hand while his other hand didn't forget to send a WeChat message to his brother. The main reason he sent the WeChat message was that he found something very interesting to share with his brother. However, Qingshan didn't know that after Bailey Shangxia sent a provocative message to Beligaju that day, his little phone was in the hands of a shameless person. "Dad, you told me before that if I want to eat gracefully, I must understand humans and know how they live." Bailey Shangxia's voice was a little cold. "If you don't give me my phone now, in the human world, it's a violation of privacy. You'll be condemned." Beligaju laughed and was very evil. Bailey Shangxia, have I been too friendly to you recently? Do you really think that you should stay in the human world? Bailey Shangxia heard this and was a little unconvinced. Who was the one who said that as long as I call mother, you won't have to threaten me when you go to the demon world for a month? Dad, are you going back on your word? I won't threaten you for a month, but that doesn't mean that I won't threaten you after this month. Beligaju was very calm. If you want to stay in the demon world for the rest of your life, I can return your little phone to you now. If you don't want to, then be good and don't disturb me when I'm looking at WeChat. Bailey Shangxia scratched the car. I really want to beat someone up. Bailey Shangxia, who was as shameless as his father, could only grab the big demon under his feet with both hands and start a one-sided PK. This was the cultivation that little demons had to do on their path of growth. However, Bailey Shangxia's methods were especially ruthless, and the big demon felt that there was nothing left to live for in this world. Beligaju didn't care how angry his son would be. He unlocked the screen with his finger and raised an eyebrow. Qingchen's WeChat? Bailey Shangxia coolly kicked the demon out of the car when he heard that it was his younger brother who was looking for him. He then moved closer to his father and wanted to see it together. Beligaju opened the WeChat and saw a few uncomfortable words. Brother, there's a person who has a crush on mother here. Judging from his eyes, he must like mother very much, but mother doesn't seem to have noticed it herself. Bailey Shangxia saw the WeChat message and knew that the situation was bad. As expected, the little phone made a buzzing sound again, but the man's side profile didn't change at all. However, his eyes were gradually dyed with a blood-red light, and the surrounding demons became more violent. All of a sudden, the dark fog filled the entire car. Bailey Jiaju sat with his legs slightly crossed. His slender fingers were wrapped in pure white gloves. His good-looking thin lips slowly raised into an arc. It was bloodthirsty and dangerous. Meanwhile, at the Emperor Hotel not far away, Li Meng saw that the matter was settled. She turned around and said to her classmates, since Wei Wei has agreed, then we don't have to worry about not seeing her boyfriend. Let's go and order first. It's not easy to book a room in the Emperor Hotel, especially when the meal hasn't started yet. Usually, they won't receive guests. This time, we can book a private room thanks to Cece. Du Cece pushed her and pretended to be reserved. In fact, her tone sounded like she was showing off intentionally. Meng, that's enough. I don't have any connections, I rely on my family. After all, Uncle is a senior manager in the Ju Wei group, so he naturally has a say here. Chapter 962. Cece, you don't have to be so humble. As long as you work harder, this Emperor Hotel is not a place you can eat whenever you want, Li Meng said. Some of the students who arrived late did not understand and asked curiously, what do you mean? We don't understand. She's recently dating the boss of the Ju Wei group. This Emperor Hotel is just one of the properties of the Ju Wei group. Li Meng pretended to be mysterious, you should understand now. Du Cece blushed and pulled the corner of Li Meng's shirt, it's not even close yet. Don't talk nonsense. Understood, we all understand. The students looked at Du Cece with ambiguous gazes. Du Cece enjoyed the attention very much and she did not deny it. She knew how to make people believe that she was really dating the CEO Ju. Hence, she acted bashfully from the beginning to the end. Everything was going well at first. However, when Du Cece looked up, she realized that no matter what happened, Xiao Zifeng's eyes never left Helly and Vivian. The way he looked at a person so intently had become the deepest jealousy in her heart since they were in school. This jealousy was still there even now. She looked at the man who had never shown any emotions towards her. Her eyes flashed as she clenched her fists. She turned her head to look at Helly and Wei Wei and said, I wonder what Wei Wei's new boyfriend looks like. I've heard that a lot of girls are pressured by their surroundings and end up making do with themselves in the end. Wei Wei, don't be like this. Our faces are so handsome, we must find someone who is worthy of you. Helly and Vivian, don't listen to Cece. My husband is not very handsome. However, the most important thing for a man is to know how to dress up. When your boyfriend comes later, see how he dresses up. If he can't, Zifeng and the rest can give him some advice. Li Meng spoke with sincerity, but in reality, the disdain in her eyes could be seen. Hellion Vivian frowned. Was she implying that His Highness was ugly and did not know how to dress? Wei Wei, why aren't you talking? Did I guess correctly? Du Cece smiled and said, it's okay. It's normal for men to be a little rough. After all, no one can guarantee that they will find the one they like. I'm afraid that some girls will do something for money and serve those fat old men. But Wei Wei doesn't look like one. She rides a motorcycle to work every day. She definitely won't do anything wrong. When Qingshan heard this, she looked at Du Cece with her big eyes. She seemed to be on the verge of exploding. When Hellion Vivian saw this, she reached out and grabbed Qingshan's ear. She smiled and looked at the students around her. Since we're talking about this, to be honest, I like that person's appearance. Otherwise, we wouldn't be together. Little Qingshan's murderous aura immediately disappeared. He nodded his little head. He believed in this. Ever since he was born, Beauty Wei Wei had been praising his father's handsomeness almost every day. That had become his mantra ever since he was a child. But, why didn't his brother reply to his WeChat? He was still waiting to discuss with his brother. Hellion Vivian's words surprised everyone. Many of the students laughed. They did not want to make the atmosphere awkward, so they joked, Wei Wei, are you serious? You don't look like the kind of person who is greedy for beauty. I've always been in the appearance circle. Hellion Vivian's tone was very natural. She smiled and said, he's the most handsome man I've ever seen. I took the initiative to chase after him because of his appearance. Hellion Vivian was telling the truth. She had always boasted that she was a domineering president. Of course, she would be the one to chase after people. However, it was obvious that others would not think so. Wei Wei, you're exaggerating. Zifeng is here. Who can be more handsome than Zifeng? Be careful, you're spreading your net too wide. It'll be hard to take it back later. Li Meng said this and laughed to the people beside her. It said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Wei Wei is working very hard for her boyfriend. Why would the cold and talented girl take the initiative to chase after him? This is too degrading. She used to say that her family has connections. Look at the result. She's still working on her car now. Among the 3 female classmates, one of them quickly understood what Li Meng meant. She glanced at Hellion Vivian with disdain. Du Cece tried to smooth things over, maybe something happened to Wei Wei's family. That's why she's like this. She definitely doesn't want to lie. You guys should stop talking about the things that happened in school. Back then, we were still young. Who didn't have vanity? Am I right, Wei Wei? Vanity? Hellion Vivian repeated these 3 words playfully. She smiled slowly, and there was a unique meaning in her thin lips. Du Cece looked like she knew her very well. She raised her wrist and looked at the watch on her wrist. It's almost 5 o'clock. We've been talking for so long, but we haven't ordered anything yet. I'll make a call first and ask them to open the red wine first. Red wine tastes better when you're awake. You guys can take a look at what you want to eat. With my uncle here, I'll definitely let everyone enjoy the best treatment. Wei Wei, you should eat more later. Not everyone can eat the food here. She was obviously saying that Hellion Vivian could not afford the food in the Emperor Hotel. The few female students behind Du Cece, including Li Meng, laughed at the same time. It was obvious what they meant. In a hotel like this, the food was indeed more expensive than usual, especially the precious ingredients. For example, the sashimi that had just been flown in from Japan and the most authentic roast duck that had just been cooked in the capital. Each dish cost more than $1,000. Moreover, one must make a reservation in advance if they wanted to eat these dishes. Therefore, Du Cece was very confident when she said this. In her opinion, Wei Wei did not have the ability to spend money, let alone find an outstanding boyfriend. When she thought of this, Du Cece added with a smile, Wei Wei, don't worry. Even if your boyfriend isn't as good looking as you said, we won't say anything. We won't be so. Before Du Cece could finish her words, a graceful and noble voice slowly sounded from behind the crowd. It was accompanied by a slightly cold and deep voice. Am I late? Chapter 963. The voice was not loud, but because it was so pleasing to the ears, it broke the noise of the hotel. It was hard for people not to notice it. Everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. They saw a man standing against the light. They did not know how long he had been standing there. He was wearing a black trench coat that was half open, revealing a pure white shirt underneath. Although he was wearing a pair of wine-red trousers that they could not identify, the texture was very good. It successfully made his legs look slender and powerful. His silver-white hair made him look like a character who had walked out of a comic book. He was full of dazzling handsomeness. His eyes were long and slightly slanted, exuding a faint sharpness. His skin was pale white, and the Dior style seemed to be tailor-made for him. From afar, the man looked like a vampire aristocrat with an oriental charm, exuding a kind of enchanting nobility. In an instant, the surrounding crowd seemed to have become a part of the background. Du Cece and the others were all speechless. Even though they had seen a lot of things, they had never seen such a handsome person. Involuntarily, several female students looked at the man in front of them in a daze. Their eyes followed his movements. He was standing at the entrance of the hall, holding a child with his slender ivory fingers. That child was also very handsome. His facial features were very deep, and his small face was fair. He was dressed in a cool manner, and he looked a little like a little devil in the TV series. He was even wearing a small leather glove on his hand. Just when Du Cece and the others were tongue-tied, the man walked over. The man had already walked over. At that moment, the dim lights in the hall seemed to have all run into his eyes. They were like flowing diamonds, pure and beautiful. Hellion Vivian had long known that this man would be able to catch other people's attention even if he was thrown into a crowd. But in fact, it was even more shocking than she had imagined. She did not know how that kind of aura was formed. He was obviously dressed in the most modern clothes, but it made people feel that this person was like a movie character from the 19th century. Just by standing there, he was handsome and peerless. Du Cece was still wondering who this man who suddenly appeared was. After all, she didn't have such an outstanding classmate in her class. At this moment, the few female students behind Du Cece who had mocked Hellion Vivian earlier were blushing. No matter who the other party was, they had to strike up a conversation first. Thus, one of the women, who thought that she was pretty, reached out to stroke her long hair and said in a sweet voice, "It's not too late. We just started." The woman's words were about to come out of her mouth when she was abruptly stopped by what happened next. The man didn't even look at them. He walked past them and stopped in front of Hellion Vivian. He asked intimately, "What's on the corner of your mouth?" "The corners of my mouth?" Hellion Wei Wei was confused. Beligaju simply reached out his hand and slowly brushed his finger across Hellion Vivian's lips. As if on purpose, this action was done extremely slowly and gently. In fact, Bailey Shangxie could see very clearly that there was nothing on the corner of his mother's mouth. His shameless father was simply declaring his sovereignty. No one else would use such a method. Xiao Zifeng stood aside and looked at Hellion Vivian. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Some of the male students were still talking to him, but he could not hear what they were saying. He could only look at the man who could get close to Hellion Vivian without any scruples. His fingers were stiff and his heart was in turmoil. Everyone present was stunned when they saw Beligaju's action. They more or less understood what was going on. "Vivian, who is this?" Before Hellion Vivian could say anything, Beligaju smiled. He was cold and well-mannered. He curled his lips and said, "Hello, I'm Vivian's husband." Husband? The university students were stunned by his smile. Didn't he say that he was her boyfriend? Hearing this, the man curled his thin lips and looked to the side to rub Hellion Vivian's head. He said rather helplessly, "We already have a child together. Why are you still telling others that I'm your boyfriend? Vivian, you're always so unclear about your position." Hellion Vivian. She was really not used to His Highness being so gentle. Moreover, he seemed to be very cooperative with other people's questions today. Why? He was usually very cold and aloof. Even if it was for her sake, according to His Highness' way of doing things, he would only reply with a light when others asked him a few questions. What was going on today? Bailey Shangxia, who knew his father's way of doing things, did not complain about his father's shamelessness. Instead, he tiptoed and picked up Qingshan from Hellion Vivian's arms. He acted like a good brother. "Are you hungry?" Qingshan nodded her little head and pushed the devil plushie in her hand forward. "This is for Big Brother." "I didn't buy it. I caught it." Bailey Shangxia hugged his younger brother, who was only a head shorter than him. Clearly, he did not have the time to take the plushie. A rare smile appeared on his cool little face. He was happy that his younger brother always thought of him. The two little ones were already very close. After being separated for a day, they had a lot to say to each other. "I also have something for you. I'll help you put it on when we eat later." As a good brother, Bailey Shangxia was more mature than Qingshan. Hellion Vivian asked him to put Qingshan down. Bailey Shangxia did not let go. Although he was a little shaky when he walked, he still felt that it was necessary to carry his younger brother. It was more dangerous to let Qingshan go down. There was such a stupid human here. What if they bump into each other later? Looking at this warm and intimate scene, Du Cece and the others felt their faces hurt. Especially the few female students who tried to strike up a conversation with the man, they felt jealous and ashamed. They never thought that Hellion Vivian would find such an outstanding-looking man. Li Meng remembered what she said just now. She wanted to scratch the wall because compared to her husband was really too weak. Fortunately, her son said that he wanted to go to the toilet and her father took him there. Otherwise, standing here would only show the gap between them. Seeing through Li Meng's thoughts, Qingshan, who had been waiting for a chance to counterattack, suddenly seized the best opportunity. Holding the devil plushie in her hand, she said in a childish voice, "Auntie, now that you have seen my dad, you should give up the idea of letting your husband teach my dad how to change clothes, right? After all, my dad is really not ugly, and obviously, Uncle can't teach my dad how to wear clothes." Chapter 964. After little Qingshan's reminder, all the students recalled what Li Meng and the others had said before the man appeared. They all turned to look at Li Meng and the others. Li Meng and Du Cece had been flattered by others ever since they graduated. They had never encountered such mocking gazes before. Moreover, it was in front of so many people. The awkwardness they felt was indescribable. Li Meng could only force a smile. Her face was a little stiff. Children tend to take adults' words seriously. "Qingshan, we were just joking with your mother." "Wei Wei, you too. You hid such a handsome man at home. Why didn't you take him out earlier and let us see him? You're still hiding him." She originally thought that by saying this, Hellion Wei Wei would be somewhat embarrassed and change the topic. Who would have thought that Hellion Wei Wei would curve her lips at her, mischievously and willfully? "It's because he's too handsome that I have to hide him. I didn't want you to see him at first. After all, I'm very troubled by people who want to come over and strike up a conversation." As Hellion Vivian spoke, she glanced at the few female students with clear eyes. Her short sentence made those people's faces turn red and white. They looked at Hellion Vivian with eyes full of resentment. However, they had no choice but to suppress it. Otherwise, they would be the ones embarrassed. "Wei Wei, you two are a good match. A female student chuckled and gave her blessings. She meant what she said. The two of them were a perfect match, both in terms of appearance and height. It was also because Hellion Vivian was more charming and evil compared to other women. Her queen-like demeanor would not be hidden no matter what the environment was or what clothes she wore. This was the person she wanted to be when she was young. She was neither servile nor overbearing and was as tenacious as time. Otherwise, anyone who stood next to Beligaju would be overshadowed and would not be able to stand out. Beligaju was very satisfied to hear such a compliment. He smiled and thanked her. At that time, the female student did not know that because of her blessings, she would be officially hired by Ju Wei Group and become a member of their legal team. Du Cece, who was standing next to them, could not stop her heartstrings from trembling. She only felt that the man's voice seemed to have a magical power. There was a low magnetism in his cold voice. Now that she was listening to it again, his voice was clear and bright like the spring breeze in March. It was refreshing and gave her a special sense of comfort. What kind of luck did Hellion Vivian have to meet such a man? However, even if he was extraordinarily handsome, so what? He must be extremely poor. Otherwise, Hellion Wei Wei wouldn't be a broken car mechanic until now. Thinking of this, Du Cece's heart calmed down a lot. While leading everyone into the private room, she smiled and said, "Wei Wei, listen to what you're saying. We're not young anymore, and we're not love-struck women. Why would we look at a man's appearance? At the very least, we should look for a successful boyfriend. Looks are secondary. Your boyfriend should have never been to the Emperor Hotel before. You should take care of him later. Come, let's start ordering. Let's eat some fruits first. I'm hungry." Du Cece looked at the waiter behind her and said, "Go and get the menu." The Emperor Hotel had always been famous in the industry for its excellent service. A private room would be accompanied by 3 to 5 waiters. Other than taking orders and serving dishes, they were also responsible for leading the way and opening the red wine. Every waiter had undergone professional training and was wearing the uniform of a butler. They looked very classy in their suits and leather shoes. However, when the waiter heard Du Cece's order, he paused. In the end, he said, "Please wait for a moment." He then left the luxurious private room. Du Cece frowned. Why did he say to wait for a moment? Shouldn't he pass the menu to them immediately? Could it be that the meal has not started yet? Forget it, these are all trivial matters. Du Cece looked at the students behind her and smiled. You don't have to be so polite. Sit anywhere you like. Today, this private room is ours. My uncle has already informed everyone, so no one will disturb us today. Cece, you're too extravagant. The few female classmates laughed again. When they sat down, they pretended to look at Hellion Vivian and said, "Sure enough, what my mother taught me in the past was right. When looking for a boyfriend, you have to find one that's presentable. So what if he's good-looking? I heard that the president of the Ju Wei Group is rich and handsome. Cece, you have to seize the opportunity. When the time comes and the two of you are together, some people will see what the most perfect boyfriend is. Look at what you're saying. Don't you know Cece? She's easily shy. From what I see, since she and that person have already eaten together, their relationship should not be too bad. Maybe the two of them are in an ambiguous period now. What's there to wait for?" The person who asked this question was Bailey Shangxia. He was still smiling and his smile was brewing an aura that belonged exclusively to the little devil. Du Cece's heart trembled when she heard this child's sudden question. She was so guilty that she did not dare to look at the gazes around her. However, she calmed down very quickly. What was she afraid of? What would a child know? In this circle, other than Li Meng's husband who had seen young Master Ju from afar, she was the only one who could enter the Ju Wei Group. If she said that she had seen him, then she had seen him. Would anyone expose her? Little kid, why do you ask this? Du Cece said sweetly, of course I've seen him before. Auntie and that president are very good friends. When Bailey Shangxia heard this, he glanced sideways at Beligaju, who was standing still. Then, he smiled very slowly. Is that so? A friend who can't recognize my father? Heh, if she had really seen him before, how could she not recognize my father? Du Cece was confused by Bailey Shangxia's smile. However, she did not take this matter to heart. After all, he was just a little kid in her heart. Bailey Shangxia did not say much. However, this did not mean that the battle had stopped even though he was not present during the whole process. However, based on the current situation, this group of people, especially this stupid woman, must have bullied his mother before he arrived. How could he let the people who bullied his mother off so easily? Qingshan was sitting next to Bailey Shangxia. She was very cute as she whispered into her brother's ear and reported to him, the person who spoke just now is called Du Cece. She was the one who said that she had a blind date with my father. She was the one who said that her uncle was a high-ranking executive in the entertainment company. Which entertainment company? Bailey Shangxia thought very coolly. When I go back, I'll make that company go bankrupt. Qingshan lifted the devil plushie up and said, Ju Wei. Bailey Shangxia thought to himself. This company really cannot go bankrupt. Chapter 965. There's another person. She's little Fatty Cheng's mother. Little Fatty Cheng was there just now. He even asked me to call him Big Brother. I held myself back for a long time and didn't beat him up, Qingshan said angrily. Bailey Shangxia raised his eyebrows and his eyes turned red immediately. The smile on his face became bloodthirsty and cruel. Good, very good. It seems that he had such thoughts because he didn't break little Fatty Cheng's bones the last time. Asking Qingshan to call him Big Brother? Does he deserve it? The image of his younger brother and mother being bullied because they were not around immediately appeared in Bailey Shangxia's mind. As a good elder brother, he would never have thought that when they first met, he had wanted to take little Qingshan in as a younger brother because he was too strong. Now, in Bailey Shangxia's heart, no other child in the world could be more obedient and sensible than his younger brother. That little Fatty Cheng was simply courting death. Wait a minute, little Fatty's surname is Cheng? Bailey Shangxia turned his head and asked his father in a low voice, is the human who always goes to the villa to greet you surnamed Cheng? Beligaju did not deny it. He sat back and crossed his legs leisurely. He smiled meaningfully. Bailey Shangxia understood what was going on. It seemed that his father was not only here to declare his ownership over his mother, but also to start a massacre. However, there were some people who were too vain. They were so vain that they could even lie as if they were telling the truth. Du Cece was already acting like she was the hostess and ordered the waiters to do this and that. Li Meng had just found her sense of superiority. She deliberately dialed her husband's number in front of her classmates. Hello, are you done? We're about to start eating. Yes, there are a lot of people. There are a few male students who want to meet you and talk to you about the project. Ask the waiters to open a few more bottles of red wine. Put the cost on me, Cheng sounded very rich. Li Meng put the call on speaker. She smiled and hung up the phone when she heard his words. The surrounding female students were envious. Li Meng, your husband is so generous. Emperor Sky Hotel's red wine isn't cheap. The cheapest one costs more than 1,000. This is Li Meng's husband. If it were someone else's husband, they might be heartbroken after drinking a few bottles. Du Cece was delighted when she heard those words. That was the way it should be. How could a woman who had not even finished her studies and could only rely on repairing cars to make a living get the upper hand? Today, she wanted to make Helian Wei Wei lose all face and dignity. So what if he was a handsome boyfriend? Without any background, she could still embarrass the other party. You guys talk too much. Look, Wei Wei hasn't said anything yet. Du Cece turned her head and looked at Helian Vivian. Vivian, since you already have a boyfriend, why don't you change your broken motorcycle? Cars aren't expensive these days. I just changed to a small sports car, and it's only around 300,000. Nowadays, there are very few people who ride motorcycles. I don't see your boyfriend's car either. Both of your salaries should be enough to buy a car, right? It's really inconvenient to bring your child to school without a car. Although Du Cece did not say this sentence very loudly, it was clear enough for all the students to hear it. The meaning behind those words was already very clear. Hellion Vivian did not say anything. Xiao Zifeng could not hold it in anymore. He raised his hand and grabbed Du Cece's wrist. Cece, that's enough. Because of his social circle, he was destined to notice the malicious intent in Du Cece's words more than ordinary people. An innocent classmate would not say such things in such an occasion. Could it be that he was wrong from the beginning? He actually wanted to get close to that person through Du Cece, who was more familiar with him. At that time, he really did not see the subtlety in it. Du Cece did not expect Xiao Zifeng to stop her. She thought that even if he liked Hellion Wei Wei, he would still give her some face in front of others. However, he did not expect that he would treat her this way because of Hellion Wei Wei. Du Cece gritted her teeth and then laughed. Wei Wei, I don't mean anything else. I just think that you shouldn't put up a front so casually. You don't even have a car, so don't let your boyfriend dress so well. We're all classmates. We know each other very well. Why waste money? Upon hearing this, Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and turned her head to look at the smiling man who was playing with his phone. I'm just wearing a black windbreaker. Is it necessary to say that I'm putting up a front casually? Among the clothes that His Highness wears, this one should be very common. The rest are all handmade. At the very least, this one is from a brand. If it were a normal person, they would definitely not be able to sit still after hearing those words. However, Hellion Vivian and her family were very calm. Especially Beligaju, he did not say a word from beginning to end. He put one hand on the back of Hellion Vivian's chair and played with his phone with the other hand. He did not even look at the two women. That kind of noble aura was naturally disdainful. His silver-gray hair, fair skin, and beautiful eyes were light red under the bright lights. He was so handsome that it made people's hearts flutter. This was because Beligaju laughed. It was obvious that he was mocking them. It was this man's attitude that made Li Meng and Du Cece even angrier. It was as if he only had eyes for Hellion Vivian and no one else was worthy to be in his eyes. What a joke. She was just an old and poor woman. How could they not be compared to Hellion Vivian with their background and education? Cece is right. Vivian, you've worked hard to repair your car. It's not easy to earn some money. It's better to save it for the children. As a person, you should be content with what you have. Don't do things that are beyond your ability. It's normal for men to want to save face, but you can't squander it like this. Li Meng thought that since they had already put it this way, there was no need for them to worry about their reputation anymore. She smiled and said, if your boyfriend really has the money to spare, he'll help you change that lousy motorcycle first. Don't always think about buying clothes. You can't count on branded cars. It shouldn't be difficult to change to a four-wheeled motorcycle, right? Or is it that you can't even afford a car with your current financial situation? Li Meng looked at Hellion Vivian and sighed softly. I thought that your boyfriend would have a decent job. Vivian, do you really not want to consider being an assistant at Cece's company? If it's really not possible, you can ask your boyfriend to go to Qing Group. I'll talk to my husband. Although he usually doesn't care about these trivial things in the company, it's still very convenient for him to arrange for someone to go in. As long as your boyfriend is not like you who has no education. Before Li Meng could finish her words, a swishing sound was heard. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.